My daughter-in-law called me a toxic grandmother. 6 weeks later, she learned who paid for her life. You're toxic, Margaret. Your outdated views are harming my children. Ashley said those words while blocking my number on her phone, right in front of my grandchildren. My son Derek stood behind her, staring at the floor like a boy caught stealing, not a 41-year-old man watching his mother be erased from his family. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, I drove home to my quiet house in Bellevue, poured myself a glass of the cheap wine I'd been drinking for 4 years, and opened the manila folder I kept in my desk drawer. The one labeled, Family Support, Derek and Ashley. $127,000. That's how much their independent life had cost me since 2019. Every mortgage payment I'd covered when Derek's business struggled. Every emergency that somehow always cost exactly what I had in savings. Every private school tuition check written because Ashley couldn't bear the thought of her children attending public school with those kids. 6 weeks later, Ashley stood on my doorstep in the rain, mascara running down her cheeks, begging for a meeting. But this time, the terms were mine. Before I tell you how I got there, please subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments where you're listening from today. Your support means everything to me. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to the woman I used to be, before I learned that love without boundaries is just another word for self-destruction. My name is Margaret Chen, and for 63 years, I believed that family was everything. I was born in San Francisco in 1961, the daughter of Chinese immigrants who ran a small grocery store in the Richmond district. My father worked 18-hour days. My mother raised 4 children while keeping the books, managing suppliers, and somehow putting dinner on the table every night at exactly 6:30. We weren't rich. We weren't poor. We were something in between, comfortable enough to dream, hungry enough to work for those dreams. I met my husband Richard at UC Berkeley in 1982. He was studying engineering. I was pursuing accounting. We married in 1985, bought our first house in 1989, and welcomed our only child, Derek, in 1984. Richard built a successful consulting firm. I managed the finances for 3 different companies over my career, eventually becoming CFO of a mid-sized tech firm in Seattle. We saved. We invested. We planned for a retirement filled with travel and grandchildren and lazy Sunday mornings. Richard died of pancreatic cancer in 2017. He was 61 years old. The diagnosis came in March. By July, he was gone. 4 months. That's all the time we had between something looks abnormal on your scan and I'm so sorry for your loss. After the funeral, I sold our house in Seattle. Too many memories, too many empty rooms, and bought a smaller place in Bellevue. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garden where I could grow tomatoes and think about all the things Richard and I never got to do. The life insurance payout was substantial. $850,000, plus Richard's retirement accounts, plus the equity from our Seattle home. By any reasonable measure, I was financially secure for the rest of my life. But security means nothing when you're alone. Derek was my anchor, my only child, the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard and call them the most beautiful flowers in the world, Mommy. The teenager who actually talked to me about his problems instead of slamming doors. The man who held my hand at Richard's funeral and whispered, "I'll take care of you now, Mom. I promise." He met Ashley in 2015 at a marketing conference in Portland. She was 28 years old, blonde, beautiful, and, as I would learn much later, absolutely certain that she deserved a life far beyond what she could afford. Their wedding in 2016 cost $47,000. Richard and I paid for most of it. Ashley's parents contributed $5,000 and complained loudly about the expense. That should have been my first warning sign. But I was so happy to see Derek happy, so grateful that he'd found someone, so desperate to become a grandmother that I ignored the way Ashley looked at our gift of crystal wine glasses like they weren't expensive enough, the way she forgot to thank us for the honeymoon to Hawaii, the way she started calling me Margaret instead of Mom, approximately 3 weeks after the wedding. Richard noticed. He always noticed things I tried to ignore. "She's calculating, Maggie," he told me one night, maybe 6 months before the diagnosis. "Watch how she looks at things, at people. She's always measuring what they're worth to her." "She's just ambitious," I said, defending her because defending her meant defending my son's choice. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things. Richard didn't argue. He just squeezed my hand and said, "Be careful how much you give, sweetheart. Some people take until there's nothing left." I wish I'd listened. The grandchildren came quickly. Emma in 2017, just 4 months after Richard's funeral. I held her in the hospital, this tiny pink creature with Derek's nose and Ashley's blue eyes, and I felt something heal inside me. A reason to keep going. A future worth living for. Oliver arrived in 2019. Another perfect baby. Another piece of my heart walking around outside my body. I threw myself into being a grandmother with the same intensity I brought to my career. I drove 45 minutes to their house in Kirkland every Tuesday and Thursday to babysit while Ashley worked on her lifestyle brand. I bought cribs, strollers, car seats, clothes, toys. Always the brands Ashley specified, always from the stores she preferred. Emma really needs the Uppa Baby stroller, Mom. It's the only one that's safe for her development. $1,200. Oliver has sensitive skin. We can only use Aiden plus Aeneas blankets. $400 for 4 blankets. The kids' room needs to be painted with non-toxic paint. It's $85 a gallon, but I'd never forgive myself if something happened to them. $680 for the paint. $2,400 for the painter Ashley insisted on hiring because she didn't trust cheap labor. Every request came wrapped in the language of child welfare. How could I say no? What kind of grandmother would prioritize money over her grandchildren's safety? I didn't say no. Not once. Not for 4 years. The requests grew larger, more frequent, more essential. In 2019, Derek's digital marketing agency lost its biggest client. Suddenly, they couldn't make their mortgage payment. Just for a few months, Mom. Just until we get back on our feet. Their mortgage was $3,200 a month. I covered it for 11 months while Derek restructured, and Ashley continued ordering $200 worth of groceries from Whole Foods every week. $35,200. In 2020, Ashley decided the kids needed to attend East Side Preparatory Academy. Public schools were fine for some families, but her children deserved better. Tuition, $28,000 per year, per child. We can swing half of it, Derek said, not meeting my eyes. But Emma's already made friends there. It would be cruel to pull her out now. I paid the other half. For both children. For 3 years. $84,000. In 2021, the house needed a new roof. In 2022, Ashley needed a new car because the BMW was embarrassing compared to what the other mothers drove at school pickup. In 2023, they wanted to renovate the kitchen because the granite countertops from 2016 were dated. I refinanced my Bellevue house to cover the renovation. $45,000 from my home equity line of credit. Handed over with a smile because I loved my son and I loved my grandchildren, and I believed, I truly, desperately believed, that family took care of family. My accountant, Patricia, tried to warn me during my 2023 tax preparation. Margaret, you've given away nearly $130,000 in the last 4 years. At this rate, you'll outlive your savings by at least a decade. They're family, I said, as if that explained everything. As if that excused everything. Patricia looked at me with something that might have been pity. Family is supposed to work both ways. I didn't listen to her either. The thing about being used is that you don't recognize it while it's happening, not really. You tell yourself stories. They're going through a hard time. They'll pay me back when things improve. I have more than I need anyway. What's the point of money if you can't help the people you love? The stories keep you warm at night, even as your savings account balance drops and your credit card debt rises, and you start buying the generic brand of everything, because every spare dollar goes to someone else's lifestyle. But there were signs. There were always signs. Ashley stopped inviting me to holiday dinners in 2021. It's just too crowded with my parents here, she explained. You understand, right, Margaret? I spent Thanksgiving alone that year, eating a turkey breast from Trader Joe's and watching the Macy's parade on television. Emma started calling me Grandma Margaret instead of just Grandma around the same time. A small thing maybe, but it felt like a demotion. A reminder that I was one of multiple grandmothers and not the preferred one. The babysitting requests dropped off in 2022. Ashley had found a wonderful nanny who was so much more reliable than family. The nanny cost $25 an hour. I had been free, but I kept paying. For the school, for the mortgage gaps, for the emergencies that somehow never stopped arriving. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I said no, I'd lose access to my grandchildren completely. Afraid that Derek would choose his wife over his mother, as husbands should, I told myself, even as my heart broke a little more each time. Afraid that I'd end up completely alone, eating frozen dinners in a house full of photos of people who didn't want me around. So I paid, and I smiled, and I pretended not to notice the way Ashley looked at me like I was the help. The last normal day was a Thursday in September. I remember because I'd woken up early to bake snickerdoodles, Emma's favorite, and drive them over as a surprise. The kids had just started a new school year. I thought they might like a treat. The cookies were perfect, golden brown, slightly crispy on the edges, soft in the center. I packed them in the nice tin, the one with the birds painted on the lid, and drove the 45 minutes to Kirkland with the windows down and oldies playing on the radio. Ashley's Mercedes was in the driveway. Derek's Tesla was gone, probably at the office. I rang the doorbell, cookies in hand, smile ready. Ashley answered in yoga pants and a sports bra, her hair pulled back, her expression immediately shifting from neutral to annoyed when she saw me. "Margaret, I wasn't expecting you. I know, I'm sorry, I should have called. I just made cookies for the kids and thought. The kids are at school." Oh, I felt stupid. Of course they were at school. It was 10:30 on a Thursday. "I can leave these for when they get home?" Ashley didn't move from the doorway. Behind her, I could see the kitchen I'd paid to renovate. New quartz countertops, Viking range, custom cabinets painted the specific shade of sage green she'd insisted was the only acceptable choice. Actually, Margaret, we need to talk about your visits." Something cold settled in my stomach. "My visits? You show up unannounced. You bring sweets when I've asked you not to. Emma is pre-diabetic. Did you forget? You undermine my parenting constantly." What? "Ashley, I would never. Last month you told Oliver that he didn't have to finish his vegetables if he wasn't hungry. In my house, right in front of me." I remembered the moment. Oliver had been crying, saying his stomach hurt. I'd suggested that maybe he could be done eating. Ashley had snapped at both of us and sent Oliver to his room. He was upset. I was just trying to. "You were undermining my authority." Ashley crossed her arms. "This is a pattern, Margaret. You think you know better than me because you raised Derek. But times have changed. Parenting has evolved. Your outdated ideas are confusing the children." My ideas. I felt the tin of cookies growing heavy in my hands. "Ashley, I just wanted to bring cookies. Cookies full of sugar and butter. For a child with blood sugar issues. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't listen. You don't respect boundaries. You just do whatever you want and expect us to be grateful." The unfairness of it stole my breath. Grateful. I had given this woman over $100,000. I had sacrificed vacations, home repairs, my own security, and she was lecturing me about gratitude over a tin of cookies. "I think I should come inside," I said quietly, "so we can discuss this properly." "There's nothing to discuss. Derek and I have talked about it, and we've decided that your visits need to be supervised from now on, and less frequent. Once a month, maybe, with advance notice, and no gifts unless we've approved them first. Supervised. Like I was a danger. Like I was the problem. Does Derek know you're saying this to me?" Something flickered in Ashley's eyes. Just for a moment. Then her expression hardened again. "Derek agrees completely. We're a team, Margaret, united. If you can't respect that, then maybe it's better if we take some space." I stood on her doorstep, the doorstep of the house I'd helped them buy, wearing the shoes I'd worn for 3 years because I couldn't afford new ones, and I felt something inside me begin to crack. "I see," I said. My voice sounded strange. Distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I'll go, then. The cookies. Keep them. Give them to your nanny. Throw them away." "I don't care." I turned and walked back to my car, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall until I was safely inside. The engine started. The house receded in my rearview mirror. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and tried to understand what had happened. Where I had gone wrong. How I had raised a son who could let his wife speak to his mother that way. My phone stayed silent. No call from Derek. No apology. No explanation. At 11:47 p.m., a text arrived. From Ashley's number. Margaret, I want to be clear about something. Your financial contributions to our family don't entitle you to special treatment with the children. Money isn't a substitute for respecting boundaries. Please think about that. I read it 3 times. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking app. For years of statements. For years of transfers. For years of giving until I had almost nothing left. $127,463. That was the exact total. I'd been rounding down. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Something had shifted. Something I couldn't name yet. But for the first time in 4 years, I wasn't wondering what I could do to make Ashley happy. I was wondering what I was going to do about Ashley. The week after the cookie incident passed in a haze of silence. No calls from Derek. No texts. No explanation. No apology. Nothing. Just the endless scroll of Ashley's Instagram feed, which I checked compulsively despite knowing it would only hurt me. Photos of Emma at soccer practice, Oliver's finger painting, a date night selfie with Derek at a restaurant I recognized, Canless, where entrees started at $75 and the wine list required a mortgage. I wondered who was paying for that dinner. Then I realized I already knew. The invitation arrived on a Monday, tucked inside a cream-colored envelope with calligraphy so perfect it must have cost $3 per piece. Ashley's parents were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary with a garden party at their home in Medina. Attendance was requested, not optional. I almost threw it away. After everything Ashley had said, the last thing I wanted was to spend an afternoon pretending we were a happy family for the benefit of her parents' friends. But Derek called that evening. The first time I'd heard his voice in 9 days. Mom, please come to the party. It would mean a lot to me. Derek, after what Ashley said, I know, and I'm sorry. She was having a bad day. The kids have been difficult, and she's stressed about her Instagram metrics dropping. He paused. She wants to apologize in person. At the party, she thinks it would be better to clear the air in a neutral setting. A neutral setting. Ashley's parents' house, surrounded by Ashley's family and Ashley's friends. The only neutral thing about it would be my complete isolation. But he was my son, my only child. And he was asking, what time should I arrive? 2 o'clock. And Mom, thank you. I love you. 3 words. 3 words I hadn't heard in months. 3 words that made me forget every warning sign, every red flag, every moment of disrespect I'd swallowed for the sake of peace. I love you too, sweetheart. I hung up and immediately opened my closet, trying to decide what to wear to my own ambush. The Hendersons' estate in Medina sprawled across 2 acres of manicured lawns and imported Japanese maples. Their house, a 7,000-square-foot monument to old Boeing money, looked down on Lake Washington like a duchess surveying her domain. I'd been there twice before, once for Ashley and Derek's engagement party, where I felt distinctly underdressed despite wearing my nicest outfit. Once for Christmas dinner in 2018, where Caroline Henderson had complimented my interesting approach to gift wrapping in a tone that made clear it wasn't actually a compliment. Today, white tents dotted the back lawn. A string quartet played something classical near the rose garden. Waiters in black vests circulated with champagne flutes and tiny canapes that probably cost more per bite than my weekly grocery budget. I'd worn my best dress, navy blue, conservative, appropriate. I'd had my hair done at a salon for the first time in 2 years. I'd even bought new shoes, $89 at Nordstrom Rack, because every other pair I owned was visibly worn. None of it mattered. I knew the moment I walked through the garden gate that I didn't belong here. The other women wore Chanel and Hermes and fabrics I couldn't identify. Their jewelry caught the September sunlight like small, expensive fires. They moved in clusters, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, speaking in the coded language of people who had never worried about money a day in their lives. I found Derek near the bar, holding a whiskey and looking uncomfortable in his suit. His face lit up when he saw me, genuine relief, genuine warmth, and for a moment, I remembered the boy who used to hug me so tight I couldn't breathe. Mom, you came. I said I would. He pulled me into an embrace, and I let myself believe that everything would be okay. That Ashley would apologize, that we could move forward, that my son still loved me more than he feared his wife. Where are the kids? I asked, looking around. With the other children in the playroom. There's a hired entertainer, some kind of princess character. Emma's obsessed. And Ashley? Derek's expression flickered, just for a second. She's with her mother, greeting guests. She'll find us in a bit. We stood together near the koi pond, making small talk about his work in my garden and the unseasonably warm weather. He asked about my health. I lied and said everything was fine.
He told me about a new client his agency had landed. I pretended to be interested. 45 minutes passed. Ashley didn't appear. Maybe I should go find her, I suggested.
Clear the air before this goes on any longer. No, Mom. Just let me get her. Stay here. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving me alone with my sparkling water and my growing unease. Around me, conversations hummed with names I didn't recognize, references I didn't understand. I was invisible, a ghost at someone else's celebration. You must be Margaret. I turned to find Caroline Henderson approaching, champagne in hand, smile perfectly calibrated to convey welcome without warmth. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. Mrs. Henderson, happy anniversary. This is a beautiful party. 40 years. She sipped her champagne. Hard to believe, isn't it? Of course, Robert and I have always understood what makes a marriage work. Compatibility, shared values, similar backgrounds. Her eyes traveled over my dress with barely concealed judgment. That's so important, don't you think? Finding someone from your own world. The implication hung in the air between us. I wasn't from their world. I never would be. I think love is what matters most, I said carefully. How sweet. Caroline's smile sharpened. Ashley mentioned you've been having some difficulties recently. Boundary issues, I believe she said. My face flushed. Ashley had been discussing our private family matters with her mother. Of course she had. Probably with everyone here. It was a misunderstanding. We're working through it. MMM. Caroline nodded slowly. Ashley's very protective of her children. Any good mother would be. But I'm sure you understand that, coming from your background. My background. Single mother. Working all those hours. She tilted her head sympathetically. It must have been so difficult, raising Derek without enough time or resources. No wonder he turned out a bit soft. Too attached to his mother, if you ask me. A man should put his wife first. That's what Robert always says. My hands were shaking. I pressed them against my sides, trying to control the tremor. Derek is a wonderful man. I'm very proud of how I raised him. Of course you are, dear. We all tell ourselves what we need to hear. Caroline patted my arm with fingers that glittered with diamonds. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the caterers. These events are such work, but I'm sure you wouldn't know about that. She glided away, leaving me standing alone by the koi pond, my face burning with humiliation. I should have left then, should have found Derek, made my excuses, driven home to my quiet house where no one looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their designer shoes. But I wanted to see my grandchildren. It had been 9 days since I'd seen their faces, heard their laughter, felt their small arms around my neck. Just a few minutes with them, I told myself, then I could go. The playroom was on the 2nd floor of the Henderson mansion, a converted sunroom filled with toys that looked like they'd never been played with. I climbed the stairs quietly, not wanting to interrupt whatever game was in progress. The door was ajar. I heard Emma's voice first. And then the princess defeats the evil witch and saves the kingdom. What happens to the witch? Another child's voice. One of Ashley's nieces, maybe. She gets locked in a tower forever and ever. That's what happens to bad people. I smiled, reaching for the door handle. Then Ashley's voice cut through the children's chatter like a knife. Speaking of bad people, Emma, did I tell you that Grandma Margaret might not be visiting anymore? I froze. My hand hovered an inch from the door. Why not? Emma's voice was confused, hurt. Because Grandma Margaret doesn't understand how to behave properly around children. She doesn't listen when Mommy tells her things. And she uses money to try to control people, which is very, very bad behavior. But Grandma Margaret is nice. She brings us cookies. Cookies that make you sick, baby. Remember when your tummy hurt? That was because of Grandma Margaret's cookies. She knew they were bad for you, but she brought them anyway, because she only cares about herself. My heart stopped. Actually stopped, a moment of perfect stillness in my chest before it stuttered back to life, pounding against my ribs like a trapped animal. She was lying to my grandchildren. poisoning them against me, using me as the villain in her fairy tale.
That's not true. Oliver's small voice, uncertain.
Grandma Margaret loves us. She thinks she loves you, Ashley said, her tone patient and condescending. But real love means respecting boundaries.
Grandma Margaret never learned how to do that because she didn't have a proper family growing up. Her parents were very poor, and they didn't know how to teach her right from wrong. The casualness of her cruelty took my breath away. She was rewriting my entire history,
Turning my parents' sacrifice into shame, their hard work into failure. Is that why she's different? Emma asked. What do you mean, sweetie? She's not like Grandma Caroline. She doesn't talk the same way.
And her clothes are, Emma hesitated, old. Ashley laughed, a light, tinkling sound that made my stomach turn. That's very observant, baby. Yes, Grandma Margaret comes from a different kind of family. A lower kind.
That's why it's so important that you girls grow up knowing the difference between people like us and people like her. Is Grandma Margaret a bad person? Oliver's voice was barely above a whisper. She's not a bad person, honey. She's just less.
Some people are born less, and they can never catch up, no matter how hard they try. Grandma Margaret tried very hard to be like us, but she couldn't. That's not her fault. It's just how God made her. I pushed the door open. 4 faces turned toward me. Emma and Oliver, their eyes wide with surprise. 2 other children I didn't recognize. And Ashley, sitting in a velvet armchair like a queen holding court, her expression shifting from confident authority to something that might have been fear, just for a moment. Then the mask slid back into place. Margaret. I didn't hear you come up. I noticed. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. My grandchildren looked back and forth between their mother and grandmother, too young to understand what they'd witnessed but old enough to sense that something was very wrong.
Kids, Ashley said smoothly, rising from her chair, why don't you go find the princess entertainer? I think she's doing face painting now. But Mommy. Now, Emma. They fled. All 4 of them, scurrying past me like I was something dangerous.
Oliver didn't meet my eyes.
Emma looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from her before. Doubt. The door closed behind them, and Ashley and I were alone. How much did you hear? She asked, all pretense of warmth gone.
Enough. Look, Margaret. My parents worked 18-hour days to give me a better life.
They died with dignity and honor.
They were worth more than everyone at this party combined, including you.
There's no need to be dramatic. You told my grandchildren that I'm less than you. That I was born less.
That my family was low. Ashley crossed her arms, her expression hardening.
I was explaining social dynamics in age-appropriate terms. Children need to understand that not everyone comes from the same place. You were poisoning them against me. I was protecting them from someone who doesn't respect boundaries. I have given you over $127,000.
The words came out sharp and clear, cutting through her composure like a blade. Mortgage payments, renovations, school tuition. Every dollar I could spare for 4 years.
And you tell my grandchildren that I'm less than you. For the first time, Ashley looked uncomfortable. Your financial contributions don't what?
Don't entitle me to basic human dignity. Don't earn me the right to not be slandered to my own grandchildren.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Ashley's voice rose. You think money gives you power over people. You think because you've helped us financially, we owe you something. That's toxic, Margaret. That's manipulative. Manipulative. I laughed, but there was no humor in it.
I paid for the house where you're raising my grandchildren, and you're calling me manipulative. We never asked you to pay for anything. You volunteered. That was your choice, and it doesn't give you the right to. Your husband asked me.
Every time. Every single time Derek called me and asked for help. And I said yes because I love him. Because I love those children. Because I thought we were family. We are family. But family has to have boundaries. And you refuse to accept that.
You show up uninvited. You undermine my parenting. You try to buy the children's affection with gifts and sweets. It's not healthy, Margaret. For them or for you.
I stared at her, this woman my son had married, this stranger who had taken everything I could give and still looked at me like I was nothing. And I felt something shift inside me. Something final.
I want to see my grandchildren.
That's not going to happen today. Excuse me. Ashley moved toward the door, positioning herself between me and the exit. You're clearly upset, emotional. It wouldn't be appropriate for the children to see you like this. Like what? Like a grandmother who just heard her daughter-in-law tell her grandchildren that she's genetically inferior? You're twisting my words. I'm repeating them exactly. I stepped closer, and for the first time, I saw real fear in Ashley's eyes. Good. I heard every word you said, Ashley. Every lie. Every insult. Every attempt to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. Derek won't believe you. It's your word against mine, and we both know who he'll choose. The confidence in her voice was sickening. She was right, of course. Derek had been choosing her for years, choosing her comfort over my dignity, her demands over my needs, her version of reality over the truth. But something had changed. Standing in that sunroom surrounded by toys my money had probably bought, facing a woman who had just called me less to my own grandchildren, I realized that I was done trying to be chosen. You're right, I said quietly. Derek will probably believe you. He's believed you about everything else. Ashley relaxed slightly, sensing victory. I'm glad you understand. But Ashley, I looked her directly in the eyes. Derek isn't the one paying your bills. I am. And I'm done. For the first time, genuine alarm crossed her face. What does that mean? It means that starting today, you and my son can figure out how to fund your lifestyle without my help. The mortgage payments stop, the tuition checks stop. Everything stops. You can't do that. We have agreements. Derek is counting on. Derek is counting on his mother's unconditional support while his wife teaches his children that their grandmother is beneath them. I moved past her toward the door. I think it's time Derek learned to count on something else. Margaret, wait. Let's talk about this rationally. I paused at the door, looking back at her one final time. She looked smaller, somehow, younger, less certain. I've been rational for 4 years, Ashley. I've been understanding and patient and forgiving. And where did it get me? Standing in a playroom while you told my grandchildren that I was born less than you. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I opened the door. Every word, every insult. You meant all of it. The only thing you didn't expect was getting caught. I walked out of the Henderson mansion without saying goodbye to anyone. Past the string quartet and the champagne waiters and the women in their designer dresses. Past Derek, who called my name from somewhere near the rose garden. Past it all, toward my car, toward my empty house, toward whatever came next. My phone buzzed before I even left the driveway. Derek's name on the screen. I didn't answer. 3 more calls came in before I reached the highway. Then a text from Ashley. Margaret, you're overreacting. Let's discuss this like adults. I turned my phone off completely and drove home in silence, my mind already working through the numbers. The bank accounts. The automatic transfers. The paper trail of my own foolishness. $127,463. That was the price I'd paid for the privilege of being told I was less. But prices can change. And starting tomorrow, I was going to find out exactly what my money had been funding all these years. Something told me I wasn't going to like what I found. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee and every financial record I could find. Bank statements going back 5 years, credit card bills, the home equity paperwork from when I'd refinanced to pay for Ashley's kitchen renovation. Tax returns showing charitable deductions I'd claimed for family gifts. My accountant Patricia's suggestion to minimize the damage. The numbers told a story I'd refused to read for years. 2019. $47,200 in transfers to Derek and Ashley. Down payment assistance, mortgage gaps, emergency funds. 2020. $38,400. Pandemic year. Derek's business struggling. Ashley's lifestyle brand, requiring investment in photography equipment, website design, a home office makeover. 2021. $41,600. Private school tuition begins, plus the roof, plus new appliances when the refrigerator stopped working, though I later saw photos of their old fridge in Ashley's parents' guest house, working perfectly fine. 2022. $52,800. The car, the medical emergency that turned out to be cosmetic dental work, the vacation to Maui that Ashley called essential for Derek's mental health. 2023, $48,400. The kitchen renovation. Oliver's specialized learning support at school. Ashley's gym membership at the Bellevue Athletic Club, $450 a month, billed directly to my credit card because it was easier that way.
I added the numbers 3 times because I couldn't believe them. $228,400. Not $127,000.
That was just the mortgage payments and tuition. The real number, the full accounting of what I'd given them over 5 years, was nearly $250,000. My hands were shaking as I pulled up my retirement account balance. $312,000. Down from $580,000 when Richard died. Down from the comfortable cushion that was supposed to see me through my final decades to this. Enough for maybe 15 years if I was careful, if nothing went wrong, if I never needed long-term care or major medical treatment. I was 63 years old. I had given away my security, my future, my peace of mind, and in return, I had been called less in front of my grandchildren. The coffee had gone cold. Outside my window, the first gray light of dawn was creeping over the Cascades. I hadn't moved from this chair in 7 hours. My phone sat on the table, still turned off since yesterday. I knew what would be waiting when I turned it on. Calls from Derek, texts from Ashley, voicemails full of explanations and justifications, and carefully crafted guilt designed to pull me back into line. I wasn't ready to hear any of it. Not yet. Not until I understood exactly what I was dealing with. I opened my laptop and typed Ashley's name into Google. Ashley Marie Henderson Flores. Age 36. Graduate of University of Washington. Class of 2010, BA in Communications. Married to Derek Chen Flores in 2016. Mother of Emma and Oliver. Founder and CEO of Ashley Flores Lifestyle, an Instagram brand with 47,000 followers dedicated to mindful living, intentional parenting, and curated home design. The Instagram account was public. I'd looked at it before, of course, but always through the lens of a proud grandmother admiring photos of her family. Now I looked with different eyes. The kitchen I'd paid for, photographed from 17 different angles. Number sign design inspo number sign kitchen goals number sign. Living my best life. The BMW I'd funded, parked artfully in front of boutique shops. Hashtag self-care Sunday. Hashtag treat yourself. The children in their East Side prep uniforms, backpacks I recognized from the $200 receipt Derek had forwarded to me. Hashtag first day of school. Hashtag raising leaders. Hashtag blessed mom. Every post was a monument to my money, presented as evidence of Ashley's success. But it was the comments that stopped me cold. Under a photo of their living room, the furniture I'd helped select, the artwork Ashley had charged to my credit card, someone named at Medina_Melissa had written, "Gorgeous space. You and Derek have worked so hard to create this life. So inspiring." Ashley's response, "Thank you. We believe in investing in quality. It's not about money, it's about values. Investing in quality. With my money." My values apparently not good enough for her Christmas table, but my dollars were perfectly acceptable. I scrolled further back. 3 months ago, a post about their anniversary dinner at Canlis. Caption, 7 years of building a life together. No one handed us anything. We earned every moment. Hashtag hard work pays off. Hashtag power couple. No one handed us anything. I thought about the $47,000 down payment, the years of mortgage assistance, the tuition, the cars, the renovations, the endless stream of emergencies that only my checkbook could solve. No one handed them anything except me, handing them everything. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Ashley's lifestyle brand had a website, professional photography, elegant design, a shop selling $45 candles and $120 throw blankets, curated by Ashley Flores for the intentional home. I clicked on About Ashley. After leaving my corporate marketing career to focus on motherhood, I discovered my passion for creating beautiful, meaningful spaces. My husband Derek and I built our dream home from nothing, learning to prioritize experiences over things and intention over consumption. Today, I help other women design lives that reflect their values. Built from nothing. Nothing except $250,000 from Derek's mother. The website had a press section, local magazine features, a podcast interview about building wealth through mindful spending, a newspaper profile headlined, "Medina Mom Turns Passion into Profitable Brand." I clicked on the newspaper article. Seattle Times, lifestyle section, published 6 months ago. "We're proof that you don't need family money to create the life you want," Flores says from her renovated Kirkland home.
Derek and I started with nothing. Student loans, credit card debt, the whole millennial experience.
But we made intentional choices, prioritized our values, and built something beautiful. Anyone can do it if they're willing to work. The interviewer had asked about her beautiful kitchen. We saved for 3 years for this renovation, Ashley had said. Every month, we put aside a little more. Derek jokes that I have spreadsheets for my spreadsheets.
But that's how you build real wealth. One intentional choice at a time. 3 years of saving. For a renovation I had paid for entirely, with money from my home equity line.
She hadn't just accepted my money and called me less. She'd erased my contribution completely, rewritten history to cast herself as a self-made success story while I ate discount groceries and wore shoes until they fell apart. I closed the laptop.
My hands were shaking again, but not from shock this time, from anger. I turned my phone on at 9 a.m., 47 missed calls, 23 text messages, 8 voicemails. I ignored all of them and called Patricia, my accountant. Margaret, is everything okay? You never call this early. I need to meet with you today, as soon as possible. A pause. This sounds serious. It is. Can you clear your schedule? Patricia had been doing my taxes for 15 years. She'd warned me repeatedly about the money I was giving away, the hit my retirement savings were taking, the precarious position I was putting myself in. I'd ignored her every time, too embarrassed to admit that my own family was using me.
I can move some things around. Can you be here at 11? I'll be there. I hung up and started gathering documents, every bank statement, every receipt, every piece of evidence that documented my contributions to Derek and Ashley's lifestyle. The manila folder I'd started keeping 2 years ago, when some small part of me had begun to suspect that something wasn't right. $228,400. Plus interest on the home equity loan, plus the opportunity cost of investments I hadn't made because the money was going elsewhere. Patricia was going to have a field day. Her office was in a small building in downtown Bellevue, 3rd floor, with a view of the construction cranes that seemed to multiply every year. I'd sat in this same chair dozens of times over the years, reviewing tax strategies and retirement projections, and all the boring, essential business of managing money. Today felt different. Today, I was here to face the full cost of my own foolishness. Patricia looked at the stack of documents I'd placed on her desk, then looked at me. How bad is it? I added up everything last night, everything I've given them since 2019. And $228,400. Patricia closed her eyes briefly, the way a doctor might when delivering a difficult diagnosis. Margaret, I know. I told you 3 years ago that you were heading for trouble. I showed you the projections. I know. Your retirement savings have dropped by nearly half. You refinanced your home. You're carrying credit card debt for the first time in your life. She opened her eyes, her expression a mixture of frustration and genuine concern. What happened that made you finally add up the numbers? I told her. Everything. The cookie incident. The anniversary party. Ashley's words to my grandchildren. The social media posts claiming they built their life from nothing. By the time I finished, Patricia's face had gone very still. She said you were less. Patricia repeated slowly. To your grandchildren. Yes. After you paid for their house, their cars, their children's education. Yes. Patricia leaned back in her chair, processing. I could see her accountant's mind working, running numbers, calculating damages, building a case the way she built a tax strategy. Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. Did you ever loan them money with any expectation of repayment? Any documented agreement that this was a loan rather than a gift? I thought back to all those phone calls from Derek. Just until we get back on our feet, Mom. I'll pay you back as soon as the business picks up. You know I'm good for it. Derek said he'd pay me back. Several times. But there was never anything in writing. So technically, these were all gifts. Technically. But I didn't. I wasn't trying to give away my retirement. I thought it was temporary. I thought they'd get back on their feet and stop asking. Patricia nodded slowly. Here's the thing. From a pure financial standpoint, that money is gone. You can't sue them to get it back. There's no legal mechanism to force repayment of gifts, even gifts given under false pretenses. My stomach dropped. I'd known this, intellectually. But hearing it stated so baldly made it feel final. However, Patricia continued. That doesn't mean you're powerless. You're still making ongoing payments, aren't you? I have automatic transfers set up. $2,400 a month to cover their mortgage gap, plus the tuition payments in September and January. When's the next transfer? I checked my phone. October 1st. 6 days from now. Then you have 6 days to decide if you want to continue funding their lifestyle. Patricia leaned forward. Margaret, I've watched you sacrifice for this family for years. You've denied yourself vacations, home repairs, basic comforts, all so your son and his wife could live beyond their means. At some point, you have to ask yourself, what are you getting in return? I was getting my grandchildren, I said quietly. Or I thought I was. And now I was getting called less. Getting blamed for every problem in their marriage. Getting painted as a villain for the crime of bringing cookies to children who loved me. Now I'm getting nothing, I admitted. Less than nothing. Patricia pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Here's what I recommend. First, stop all automatic transfers immediately. Today. Don't wait until October 1st. Do it now, so there's no chance of another payment going through. They'll notice. Good. Let them notice. Let them scramble to figure out how they'll cover their bills without your help. What if they can't make the mortgage payment? What if they lose the house? Patricia looked at me with something like pity. Margaret, you're 63 years old. You've given away nearly $250,000. Your retirement is in jeopardy. And you're still worrying about whether they can afford the house you paid for. She was right. I knew she was right. But the guilt was so deeply ingrained, so much a part of who I had become over these past years, that cutting it out felt like surgery without anesthesia. What else? I asked. Second, I want you to document everything. Every text message, every email, every social media post where Ashley claims they built their success independently. The newspaper interview. The Instagram captions. All of it. Why? Because if they decide to retaliate, if they try to sue you for breach of some imaginary agreement, or claim you promised support you're now withdrawing, you'll need evidence that you were being misled about where your money was going. I hadn't even considered that they might sue me. But Patricia was right to think ahead. Ashley was strategic, calculating. Richard's words echoed in my memory. She's always measuring what they're worth to her. Third, Patricia continued, I want you to consult with a family attorney. Not because you're planning to sue, but because you need to understand your options. Grandparent visitation rights. The legal implications of cutting off support. What happens if they try to prevent you from seeing Emma and Oliver? My heart clenched. They can do that? Just keep my grandchildren from me. In Washington state, grandparents have very limited legal standing when both parents are alive and married. If Derek and Ashley decide to cut contact, there's not much you can do about it legally. The injustice of it was staggering. I had funded their lives for 5 years. Watched Emma and Oliver grow from infants to children. Changed diapers, read bedtime stories, wiped tears, and celebrated birthdays. And none of that mattered. None of it gave me any right to see them. So I could stop the money, I said slowly, and they could punish me by taking away my grandchildren. Is that what you're saying? Patricia's expression softened. That's a possible outcome, yes. You need to be prepared for it. I sat in silence, feeling the weight of the choice in front of me. Keep paying. Keep being used. Keep being called less, but maybe, possibly, get to see my grandchildren occasionally, under Ashley's conditions. Or stop paying, reclaim what was left of my dignity and my savings, and risk losing Emma and Oliver forever. There's something else, Patricia said after a moment. Something that might change your calculation. What? She hesitated. This is outside my area of expertise, but over the years I've developed some sources. People in the financial community who share information about unusual transactions. I don't understand. Your son's business. Derek's marketing agency. I was reviewing some public records last month, unrelated to you, just routine market research, and I noticed something strange. My skin prickled with sudden unease. Strange how? His company filed quarterly revenue reports with the state standard LLC documentation, and the numbers don't match what he's been telling you. What do you mean? Patricia pulled up something on her computer, turning the screen so I could see. A spreadsheet of revenue figures, dates, corporate filings. In 2022, Derek told you his business was struggling. That's when you covered their mortgage for 6 months, right? Yes. He said they'd lost their biggest client. According to his state filings, his revenue that year was $847,000. The highest it had ever been. The number hung in the air between us. $847,000. His best year ever. The same year he called me crying about how they couldn't make ends meet. That can't be right, I said. He showed me bank statements. The business account was practically empty. Did you see the business account? Or did you see what he wanted you to see? The question hit me like cold water. I thought back to those frantic phone calls, Derek's stressed voice, the screenshots he'd texted showing declining balances. I'd never verified any of it. Never thought to question my own son. There's more, Patricia said quietly, but I don't think you want to hear it right now. Tell me. His company made a large purchase in December 2022. A $95,000 transfer to an LLC registered in Nevada. The LLC is called Pacific Horizon Holdings. What is it? I don't know. The Nevada registration is deliberately opaque. That's why people use it. But $95,000 is a lot of money to move into an untraceable company during the same year your son claimed he couldn't pay his mortgage. My mind was racing, trying to fit the pieces together. The business doing well while Derek claimed poverty. The money moving to a hidden company. The years of requests for help that now seemed less like desperation and more like, Patricia, I said slowly, are you saying my son has been lying to me? Not just Ashley, Derek. Patricia's silence was answer enough. I need to find out what Pacific Horizon Holdings is, I said. That's going to require some digging. Nevada LLCs are designed to be private. Then I'll dig. I stood up, gathering my documents. I've spent 5 years being lied to by my own family. I want to know the full truth, no matter how ugly it is. Patricia walked me to the door. Margaret, whatever you find, remember that you didn't cause this. You were a mother trying to help her son. The fact that he may have exploited that doesn't make you foolish. It makes him cruel. I nodded, unable to speak, because some part of me still couldn't believe it. Still wanted to find some explanation that would make Derek the son I remembered, not the stranger who'd apparently been stealing from me for years. But I was done believing comfortable lies. It was time for uncomfortable truths. That evening, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my bank. The automatic transfers to Derek and Ashley's account, $2,400 per month for the mortgage gap, were canceled immediately. Effective today. No more payments would be going through. The woman on the phone asked if I wanted to leave a note for the recipient, explaining the cancellation. No, I said. They'll figure it out. The second call was to a private investigator named Thomas Brennan, whose name Patricia had given me along with a warning that his services weren't cheap. I need you to find out everything about an LLC called Pacific Horizon Holdings, I told him. It's registered in Nevada. I need to know who owns it, what it does, and where the money goes. That's going to require some work, Brennan said. Nevada's one of the hardest states to crack. Could take a few weeks. I don't care how long it takes. I need the truth. Can I ask what this is about? I thought about Derek's face at the anniversary party, calling out to me as I walked away. The son I'd raised. The son I'd sacrificed for. The son who might have been lying to me for years. Family, I said. It's about family. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my living room, surrounded by photos of grandchildren I might never see again, and memories of a son who might never have existed. The investigation had begun, and whatever I found, I knew one thing for certain. There was no going back now. Thomas Brennan called on a Thursday morning, exactly 11 days after I'd hired him. Mrs. Flores, I have information. But I need to warn you, it's not good news. I was standing in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hand, watching the October rain streak down my windows. 11 days of silence from Derek and Ashley. 11 days of wondering if I'd made the right choice. 11 days of checking my phone obsessively, hoping for some word about my grandchildren. Tell me everything. I'd prefer to do this in person. Some of what I've found requires documentation. We agreed to meet at 2 p.m. at his office in Redmond. I spent the next 4 hours unable to focus on anything, pacing my house like a caged animal, running through every possible scenario in my mind. Maybe it was nothing. A business investment Derek hadn't told me about. A tax shelter his accountant had recommended.
Something innocent that would explain everything and let me believe my son wasn't the man I was starting to fear he'd become. But deep in my gut, I knew better. You don't hide innocent things in Nevada LLCs. Brennan's office was smaller than I expected, a single room on the second floor of a nondescript building, with a view of a parking garage. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, with the kind of unremarkable face that probably served him well in his profession. A thick folder sat on his desk between us. "Before we begin," he said, "I need you to understand that everything I'm about to show you was obtained through legal means. Public records, court filings, social media analysis, and interviews with willing sources. Nothing that would compromise you in any legal proceeding. I understand." He opened the folder. The first page was a corporate registration document, dense with legal language. Pacific Horizon Holdings, LLC was registered in Nevada on March 15, 2021. The registered agent is a company called Desert Shield Corporate Services. They're what's known as a nominee service. They provide privacy for the actual owners. So you couldn't find out who owns it. I didn't say that. Brennan's expression was carefully neutral. Nevada LLCs are designed to be opaque. But people make mistakes. They forget to separate their personal and business communications. They use the wrong email address. They get careless. He turned to the next page. A screenshot of an email, with certain sections highlighted. This was obtained from a source at a real estate development company in Spokane. Pacific Horizon Holdings attempted to purchase a commercial property there in 2022. The deal fell through, but the correspondence remained in their files. I looked at the email. The sender was listed as d.flores@pacifichorizon.net. The signature line read, "Derek Flores, Managing Partner." My son's name. My son's email. My son's secret company. There's more, Brennan continued. Pacific Horizon Holdings has received over $340,000 in transfers since 2021. The money comes from 3 sources. He laid out a chart showing the flow of funds. I followed the lines with my finger, trying to understand. The first source is your son's marketing company. Approximately $180,000 in consulting fees paid to Pacific Horizon over the past 3 years. He's paying himself? He's hiding money. Consulting fees to his own LLC reduce his company's taxable income while moving cash into an account you, and presumably his wife, don't know about. My stomach turned. What about the other sources? Brennan pointed to the second line on the chart. The second source is more interesting. A company called Henderson Family Trust has transferred approximately $95,000 to Pacific Horizon Holdings. Henderson. Ashley's maiden name. That's Ashley's parents, I said slowly. Cody and Caroline Henderson. Correct. The Henderson Family Trust is a standard estate planning vehicle, but trusts usually distribute to beneficiaries, not to anonymous Nevada LLCs. Brennan paused. Unless those LLCs are controlled by the beneficiaries. I stared at the chart, my mind racing. Ashley's parents were sending money to Derek's secret company, which meant either they knew about it, or Ashley knew about it, and was funneling money through them. And the third source? Brennan's expression shifted slightly. Something that might have been sympathy crossed his face. The third source is a personal checking account. Monthly transfers of $1,500 to $2,000, beginning in June 2020, and continuing to the present. Whose account? He turned to the final page in the folder. A bank statement with the account holder's name highlighted. Margaret Chen Flores. My own name. My own account. Money I've been sending to what I thought was Derek's struggling business, apparently being routed directly into his secret fund. I don't understand, I said, my voice strange and distant in my own ears. I sent money to Derek and Ashley's joint account. For the mortgage. For emergencies. I never sent anything to this Pacific Horizon. You didn't, Brennan agreed. But money is fungible, Mrs. Flores. Every dollar you sent them freed up a dollar that could go somewhere else. Your mortgage assistance became their investment capital. Your tuition payments became their hidden savings. He pulled out another document. A spreadsheet comparing dates. Look at the pattern. March 2021. You sent $8,400 to cover 3 months of mortgage. The same week, Derek transferred $7,500 to Pacific Horizon. July 2022. You sent $15,000 for Emma's tuition. 2 days later, $12,000 went to the LLC. The numbers swam before my eyes. Every sacrifice I'd made,
Every luxury I'd denied myself. Every dollar I'd scraped together to help my struggling son. It had all been a lie. He hadn't been struggling. He'd been skimming, taking my generosity and converting it into a secret fortune I was never meant to know about. "There's one more thing," Brennan said quietly. I looked up at him, wondering what could possibly be worse than what I'd already learned. Pacific Horizon Holdings has a second managing partner. The registration was amended in September 2022 to add a co-owner. He laid down the amended registration, and there, in black and white, was the second name, Ashley Marie Henderson Flores. I drove home in a daze, the folder of evidence on my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. They'd been in it together, the whole time. Derek and Ashley, working as a team to drain my savings while pretending to struggle. The Henderson family money flowing through the same channels as my sacrifices, all of it pooling in a hidden account that now held over $340,000. More money than I had left for my entire retirement. The rain had stopped by the time I pulled into my driveway. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, unable to move, unable to process the magnitude of the betrayal. My son, my only child, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bicycle, helped with homework, celebrated at graduations. He had looked me in the eyes and lied. Not once, not accidentally, but systematically, deliberately, for years. The struggling business that was actually thriving. The emergency funds that went straight into his secret account. The tears on the phone when he'd asked for help. The promises to pay me back. The gratitude that had seemed so genuine. All of it performance. All of it calculated manipulation, designed to extract maximum value from a mother who loved too much and questioned too little. And Ashley, the woman who'd called me toxic and less than, and claimed they'd built everything from nothing. She hadn't just married my son. She'd been his partner in crime from the beginning, maybe even the architect of the whole scheme. I thought about Caroline Henderson's words at the anniversary party. Derek is a bit soft, too attached to his mother. Not soft, strategic. He'd stayed attached because I was useful, because my love was profitable. The first sob caught me by surprise. Then another, and another, until I was crying in my car like a child, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. 41 years of motherhood, thousands of diapers changed, meals cooked, tears wiped, dreams supported. And this was what it had bought me. A son who saw me as nothing more than a source of revenue. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I wiped my face, gathered the folder of evidence, and went inside to plan my next move. The first call came 3 days later. I was in my garden, deadheading roses that should have been pruned weeks ago, when my phone buzzed. Derek's name on the screen. I'd been waiting for this, had known it was coming the moment the October mortgage payment failed to appear in their account. I let it ring. Watched his name pulse on the screen through 4 rings, 5, 6. The voicemail notification appeared 30 seconds later. I played it on speaker, my hands still dirty from the garden soil. "Mom, hi, it's me. Listen, there seems to be some kind of problem with the bank transfer this month. I'm sure it's just a technical thing, but can you give me a call when you get this? We need to talk about a few things anyway. Love you." His voice was casual, unconcerned, the voice of a man who had no idea the ground was about to open beneath his feet. I went back to my roses. The second call came 4 hours later. This time, I answered. "Mom, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Hello, Derek." A pause. Something in my tone must have registered, because his next words were more careful. "Is everything okay? You sound different." "I'm fine. What do you need?" "Well, like I said in the voicemail, there's an issue with the transfer. The mortgage payment didn't come through, and the bank is already calling. I'm sure it's just a glitch, but it's not a glitch." Silence. I could almost hear him recalibrating, trying to figure out the angle. "What do you mean?" "I mean I canceled the automatic transfer 11 days ago. The same day I left your in-laws' anniversary party." More silence. Then, "Mom, I know you were upset about what happened with Ashley, but..." "I'm not upset, Derek." "I'm finished." "Finished? What does that? I've stopped all financial support. The mortgage payments, the tuition contributions, the emergency funds, everything. You're on your own." His voice shifted, an edge of panic creeping in. "Mom, you can't just. We have bills. Obligations. Emma's school is expecting the January payment. We budgeted around. You budgeted around my money, I interrupted. Money I gave you while I ate store-brand groceries and wore shoes until they fell apart. Money I refinanced my house to provide. Money you told me you desperately needed while your business was having its best years ever. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. I could feel him realizing that I knew more than he'd expected. I don't know what you think you found out, he said carefully, but I can explain. Can you explain Pacific Horizon Holdings? Nothing. No response at all. Just the sound of his breathing, suddenly faster. Can you explain the $340,000 you and Ashley have hidden in a Nevada LLC while claiming you couldn't afford your mortgage? Can you explain why your struggling business reported $847,000 in revenue the same year you cried on the phone about losing everything? Mom, can you explain why every dollar I sent you went straight into your secret investment fund? Why your in-laws are funneling money to the same account? Why the entire time you were begging me for help, you were building a fortune behind my back? It's not what it looks like. Then what is it, Derek? Please, explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my son has been stealing from me for 5 years. I wasn't stealing, I was. He stopped, and I could hear him struggling to find words that wouldn't incriminate him further. It's complicated. The LLC was Ashley's idea, a way to protect assets in case the business failed. We weren't hiding money from you specifically. We were just being prudent. Prudent. The word tasted like poison. You transferred my mortgage assistance into a secret account within days of receiving it. You lied about your revenue to make me think you needed help. You took my retirement savings while building your own nest egg. That's not prudent, Derek. That's fraud. I'm your son. You can't call helping your son fraud. You're right. When I thought I was helping my struggling son, it wasn't fraud. It was love. But you weren't struggling. You were using me. That's the part that's fraud. Mom, please. His voice cracked, and for a moment he sounded like the boy who used to bring me dandelions. I'm sorry. I know I should have told you about Pacific Horizon. But Ashley said. Ashley said what? He hesitated. She said you wouldn't understand. That you'd judge us for trying to build wealth instead of just spending everything. She said if you knew about the investments, you'd stop helping, and we weren't ready to be on our own yet. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. They'd kept me in the dark specifically so I would keep giving. The lie wasn't a mistake or an oversight. It was strategy. Is that supposed to make me feel better? I asked, quietly, knowing that you chose to deceive me deliberately, that you and your wife sat down and calculated exactly how to extract maximum value from your own mother? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? We were trying to secure our future. The kids' future. We didn't know how long the good years would last, and Ashley's parents have always had money, but we couldn't count on it. You were the reliable one. You always came through. The reliable one. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like a vending machine. Insert guilt, receive money. Mom, do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for you? I haven't taken a vacation in 5 years. I've been putting off medical procedures because I couldn't afford the copay. Last winter, I kept my thermostat at 62 degrees to save on heating bills. And the whole time, you had $340,000 sitting in a secret account. I didn't know things were that bad for you. You didn't ask. You just kept taking. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. When Derek spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder, less apologetic. So what happens now? You cut us off completely. Let Emma and Oliver suffer because you're angry at their parents. Don't you dare use my grandchildren against me. I'm not using them, I'm asking a practical question. Without your help, we'll have to pull them out of East Side Prep. We might lose the house. Is that what you want for them? What I want is a son who doesn't lie to me. What I want is to see my grandchildren without being called toxic and inferior. What I want is a family that treats me like a person instead of an ATM. We can work toward that. But right now, we need the November payment. The mortgage company is already sending threatening letters. I almost laughed at the audacity. Derek, you have $340,000 in a hidden investment account. Use that. We can't access it easily. The money's tied up in, I don't care, figure it out. The way you apparently expected me to figure out my retirement when you drained half of it. Mom, please. I'm begging you. The desperation in his voice was real.
But I'd heard that desperation before. Every time he called asking for money, every time he'd manufactured a crisis to trigger my maternal instincts. Goodbye, Derek.
Mom, wait. I hung up. Then I blocked his number.
My hands were shaking as I set down the phone. 63 years old, and I'd just cut off my only child. The boy I'd loved more than life itself. The man he'd become, who loved money more than his mother. Outside, the October wind was stripping leaves from the maple tree in my backyard. Richard had planted that tree the year Derek was born, said he wanted something that would grow along with his son. The tree had kept its promise. My son hadn't. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by photos of a family that no longer existed. But as the evening wore on and the wine warmed my blood, something unexpected began to replace the grief. Clarity. For the first time in 5 years, I could see my situation without the fog of guilt and obligation. My son had betrayed me. His wife had poisoned my grandchildren against me. And somewhere in Kirkland, there was $340,000 that had grown from seeds I'd planted with my own sacrifice. The money was gone. I'd accepted that. But the truth was still out there, waiting to be told. And I was starting to realize exactly who needed to hear it. The email arrived at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been sleeping poorly since the confrontation with Derek, waking at odd hours, my mind churning through memories I couldn't escape. That night I'd given up on sleep entirely and was sitting at my kitchen table with chamomile tea, scrolling mindlessly through my inbox. Most of it was junk. Credit card offers, sale notifications, newsletters I'd never unsubscribed from. But one subject line stopped me cold. FWD, the Margaret problem, what now? The sender was an email address I didn't recognize. jenny.martindale@gmail.com. No greeting, no explanation. Just a forwarded email chain with a brief note at the top. Mrs. Flores, I worked as Ashley's assistant for 6 months last year. I quit because of how she treated me, but I kept some things. You should see this. I'm sorry. My finger hovered over the screen. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me was already bracing for impact. I opened the chain. The emails were dated from 3 weeks ago, shortly after the anniversary party disaster. The original message was from Ashley to her mother, with Derek CC'd. From Ashley Flores to Caroline Henderson CC, Derek Flores. Subject: The Margaret problem. Mom, well, we have a situation. Margaret made a scene at your anniversary party. I'm sure Dad told you. And now she's apparently cutting us off financially. Derek talked to her yesterday, and she knows about Pacific Horizon. We don't know how she found out, but she's clearly been snooping. The good news is there's nothing she can do legally. Patricia, Derek's accountant friend, confirmed the gifts can't be clawed back. She gave us the money willingly. If she's stupid enough to have impoverished herself in the process, that's her problem. The bad news is she might try to tell people. You know how the Chinese are about face. She'll want to shame us publicly to restore her honor or whatever. We need to get ahead of this. Derek thinks we should try to smooth things over. I think that's a waste of time. She's been a burden for years, always showing up uninvited, undermining my parenting, expecting us to be grateful for money she offered to give, like we're supposed to kiss her ring forever because she helped with the down payment. My vote is we cut her off completely. Block her number, tell the kids she's taking a break, and wait for her to die. She's 63 and doesn't take care of herself. How long can she really last? What do you think? I read it 3 times. Each time, the words cut deeper. How she treated me. Stupid enough to have impoverished herself. Wait for her to die. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll to the next message. Caroline's response, sent 2 hours later. From Caroline Henderson to Ashley Flores. CC, Derek Flores. Subject: the Margaret problem. Darling, your father and I discussed this at length. We agree that Margaret has become more trouble than she's worth. The scene at our party was embarrassing. Several of our friends asked questions afterward. I told them she has early onset dementia, which seemed to satisfy everyone. That said, we need to be strategic. If she does try to expose the Pacific Horizon situation, we should have a response ready. My suggestion: play the victim.
She's a lonely widow who became obsessed with controlling her son's family. She gave money we never asked for, then expected access to our grandchildren as payment. When we set healthy boundaries, she snapped. The cultural angle could work in our favor.
You know how people are. They'll assume an immigrant family has different values about money and obligation. We're the progressive, modern parents who refuse to be manipulated by old-world guilt. As for Derek, sweetheart, I know this is difficult, but your mother-in-law was always going to be a liability. Your father recognized it at the wedding. A woman of her background was never going to fit into our social circle.
You've been gracious far longer than necessary.
Let her fade away quietly. Eventually, she'll run out of money and energy. These people always do. Love always, Mom.
These people, Caroline Henderson, with her Hampton Summers and her designer everything, had reduced me to these people. An immigrant, a liability, someone to be tolerated until I conveniently died. But it was Derek's response that destroyed me. From Derek Flores to Ashley Flores, Caroline Henderson. Subject, the Margaret problem. I think you're both right. Mom was useful for a while, but she's becoming a problem.
The money was nice, but it came with strings.
The visits, the expectations, the constant need for attention. It was exhausting. I tried calling her yesterday to smooth things over, but she's blocked my number. Honestly, it's a relief.
I was tired of performing gratitude every time she bailed us out.
Like, congratulations, you gave away your retirement to feel important. That's not my problem. My only concern is the kids. Emma keeps asking when she'll see Grandma Margaret again.
I've been telling her grandma is busy, but that won't work forever. Maybe we just tell them the truth. That Grandma Margaret turned out to be a toxic person who was using money to control our family. Kids are resilient. They'll adjust.
Ashley, can you handle the messaging with them? You're better at that stuff than I am. I'll focus on restructuring our finances to cover the gap she left. Also, Mom, Caroline, thanks for the suggestion about the dementia angle. That's brilliant. If anyone asks, we'll say she's in cognitive decline, and we're respecting her wishes for privacy. Who's going to challenge that? D. Cognitive decline. My son was telling people I had dementia, making up a medical condition to explain why I'd been cut from the family, covering his tracks with a lie so perfect no one would ever question it. And his solution for the grandchildren? Poisoning them against me,
teaching them that their grandmother was toxic, the same word Ashley had used to my face, now weaponized as official family doctrine. I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness of my kitchen, listening to the clock tick above my refrigerator. 4:23 a.m., the earliest hours of a Tuesday morning, and my entire understanding of my son had just collapsed. I'd known he'd lied about money, known he'd hidden Pacific Horizon and manipulated me for financial gain. But some part of me had still believed, desperately, foolishly, that he loved me underneath it all, that he'd been led astray by Ashley and her family, that my son, the real Derek, was still in there somewhere. Tired of performing gratitude. Gave away your retirement to feel important.
That's not my problem. He wasn't my son anymore. Maybe he never had been.
Maybe the boy who brought me dandelions had been a performance too,
calculated to ensure maximum emotional investment. I thought about what Caroline had written.
These people always do. Fade away. Run out of money and energy.
Disappear quietly so the wealthy wouldn't be inconvenienced. That was what they expected from me. Quiet surrender, dignified death. A problem that solved itself. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made a list. Every person who needed to know the truth. Every avenue for making it known. Every weapon in my arsenal that they'd failed to account for.
Patricia Morrison, the lifestyle editor at the Seattle Times who'd written the glowing profile of Ashley's self-made success.
She'd based her article on lies. She deserved to know.
The parents at East Side Preparatory Academy, where Ashley positioned herself as a paragon of mindful motherhood. They donated to the same charities, attended the same fundraisers, thought they knew who the Flores family really was.
Ashley's Instagram followers. 47,000 people who believed they were following an inspiring story of hard work and intentional living. 47,000 people who had no idea that every beautiful photo was funded by a grandmother they'd never heard of.
And most importantly,
The Hendersons' social circle. The Medina elite who attended their parties and admired their taste and believed Caroline when she said I had dementia. The people whose opinions mattered most to a family obsessed with status and appearances. They wanted me to fade away quietly. I was going to make noise they'd hear for years. But first, I needed more ammunition. The email chain from Ashley's former assistant had given me a window into their thinking, but it wasn't enough. I needed documentation. Proof that couldn't be dismissed as the ravings of a bitter old woman. I opened my laptop and typed a response to Jenny Martindale. Jenny, thank you for sending this. You've confirmed what I already suspected, but seeing it in their own words is different. I have a few questions, if you're willing to talk. Can we meet in person? The response came within the hour. I was hoping you'd say that. I know things they definitely don't want public. Coffee tomorrow. There's a place in Bellevue called Mercury's. Quiet, private. I can be there at 10. I typed my agreement and closed the laptop. Outside, the first gray light of dawn was breaking over the Cascades. A new day, a new phase of whatever this had become. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the doormat, the ATM, the convenient grandmother who showed up when needed and disappeared when requested. I was something else now, something they'd created but hadn't anticipated. I was the woman with nothing left to lose. Jenny Martindale was younger than I expected. Late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a sensible ponytail, dressed in business casual that suggested a professional job. She was already seated when I arrived at Mercury's, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, looking nervous. Mrs. Flores, thank you for meeting me. Thank you for reaching out. I settled into the chair across from her, studying her face. Why did you do it? Send me those emails. Jenny took a deep breath. I worked for Ashley for 6 months last year. Virtual assistant, content scheduling, occasional errands. She paid well, but she treated me like garbage. Constant criticism, impossible deadlines, the works. And the way she talked about people when she thought no one was listening. Like me? Like everyone. But you came up a lot. Jenny hesitated. She called you the old cow. Said you were good for one thing, writing checks. She used to joke about how easy you were to manipulate. Just cry a little and mention the kids, and she opens her wallet like magic. The words hit me like physical blows. The old cow. Easy to manipulate. There's more, isn't there? I asked quietly. Jenny nodded. Ashley kept everything digital. Emails, texts, financial records, all synced to a cloud drive I had access to for work purposes. When I quit, I may have downloaded some files. Insurance, in case she tried to claim I'd done something wrong. She pulled a flash drive from her purse and slid it across the table. What's on here? 3 years of text messages between Ashley and Derek. Email threads with the Henderson family. Financial records for Pacific Horizon Holdings. And about 200 photos from Ashley's personal camera roll. Pictures that didn't make Instagram. Pictures of what? The lifestyle she actually lives. The receipts she hides. The stuff that proves the self-made success story is complete fiction. Jenny paused. Including screenshots of the money transfers from you. She photographed them. Showed them to her mother like trophies. I stared at the flash drive. Such a small thing to contain so much destruction. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Jenny met my eyes. Because Ashley Henderson is a narcissistic monster who destroys everyone around her. She got me fired from my next job by spreading rumors about my mental instability. She did the same thing to 2 assistants before me. And now she's doing it to you. Telling people you have dementia, painting you as the villain. You know about that. I still have friends who work in her circle. Word travels. Jenny pushed the flash drive closer to me. These people think they're untouchable because they have money and connections. But they're also careless. They put everything in writing because they never imagine anyone will see it. I picked up the flash drive, feeling its weight in my palm. Evidence. Documentation. The truth. In their own words. What do you want in return? I asked. Nothing, just use it. Make sure people know who they really are. I'm not brave enough to do it myself. I need to work in this town, and the Hendersons could make that very difficult. But you don't have those constraints. She was right. I had no career to protect, no social standing to maintain, no reason to play nice. There's one more thing, Jenny said, reaching back into her purse. This might be the most important. She handed me a printed email. I scanned it quickly, not understanding at first. Then I saw the names. And the numbers.
And the date. Is this real? I confirmed it with a source at the school. Ashley forged documents to get Emma and Oliver into Eastside Prep. Their admission donations were funded by you, but she told the school the money came from a family foundation. Tax fraud, basically. She claimed deductions she wasn't entitled to. The email was a correspondence between Ashley and the school's development office, discussing the Henderson Flores Family Foundation and its generous contributions. A foundation that didn't exist, funded by money that wasn't hers, claimed on tax returns as charitable giving. This isn't just embarrassing, I said slowly. This is criminal. I know. Jenny stood up, collecting her things. Which is why you should probably talk to a lawyer before you do anything.
Whatever you decide, make sure you're protected. She left me alone at the table with the flash drive and the printed email, my cold coffee forgotten, my mind racing through the possibilities. For 5 years, I had been used, lied to, exploited,
mocked behind my back and dismissed to my face.
Now I had proof, documentary evidence of fraud, manipulation, and potentially criminal activity. The question was what to do with it. I spent 3 days reviewing the contents of that flash drive.
3 days of text messages that made me physically ill. Ashley and Derek joking about my guilt complex, comparing notes on which emergencies triggered the largest donations, rating my gullibility on a scale of 1 to 10. Just had her over for dinner, brought the good wine, spent 2 hours telling her how much we appreciate her. She'll probably cover the car payment for the next 6 months. Derek, March 2022. The cow just sent another $5,000 for Oliver's speech therapy. I spent it on the new patio furniture. She'll never know the difference. Ashley, July 2023. Mom's asking questions about our finances. Time to trot out the struggling business story again. Works every time.
Derek, September 2023. 3 years of manipulation, laid out in black and white. Every kind word a transaction. Every expression of gratitude a tactical maneuver. But it was the photos that broke something inside me.
The first few were innocuous, behind-the-scenes shots of Instagram posts, showing the mess that had been cropped out of the perfect images. But then I found the folder labeled Proof, screenshots of my bank transfers, organized by date with annotations. November 2021, $3,200. Emergency roof fund, actually spent on anniversary trip to Napa. LOL. March 2022, $8,400.
3 months, mortgage assistance. Split between Pacific Horizon, $5,000. Ashley's Botox, $1,200. Kids' clothes, $2,200. August 2022, $4,500.
Emma's medical expenses, actually spent on kitchen island upgrade plus new lighting fixtures. She had kept receipts, not for tax purposes, but for entertainment.
A scrapbook of her successful con, annotated with smug commentary and laugh-out-loud abbreviations. The final photo in the folder was a screenshot of a text conversation between Ashley and her mother. Ashley just got the quarterly transfer from the cow. $7,200 this time. She's such an easy mark. Caroline, darling, don't be crass. She's a resource, not a target. Ashley, same difference. Derek's already moved $5,000 to PH. The rest is covering Emma's writing lessons. Caroline, well done. Your father was right about her. Immigrants are so desperate for acceptance, they'll pay anything to feel included. Ashley, the best part, she thinks we actually like her. I closed the laptop and sat in my kitchen, trembling. Not with grief this time. Not with shock or betrayal or any of the emotions I'd cycled through over the past weeks. This was rage. Pure, clarifying, incandescent rage. They thought I was a resource, an easy mark, a desperate immigrant who would pay for the privilege of proximity to their lives. They'd been laughing at me the whole time. Every smile, every thank you, every we love you, Mom. All of it was theater. All of it was technique, refined over years of practice, designed to maximize extraction from a woman who only wanted to be loved. I had given them $228,400. My retirement security, my peace of mind, 5 years of my life. And they had given me nothing but contempt. Caroline Henderson had said I would fade away quietly.
That these people always did. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I picked up my phone and called Thomas Brennan. I need to meet with you again. And this time, I need recommendations. A lawyer who specializes in fraud, a forensic accountant, and someone who knows how to get information into the right hands. That sounds like you're preparing for war, Mrs. Flores. I looked at the laptop, still displaying Ashley's annotated scrapbook of my exploitation. I am, I said, and I intend to win. The law offices of Harrington and Associates occupied the entire 34th floor of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. I'd never been to a place like this, all polished marble and hushed efficiency, the kind of environment where money spoke in whispers and problems disappeared if you paid enough. Thomas Brennan had arranged the meeting. Victoria Harrington is the best in the Pacific Northwest, he'd said. White-collar fraud, asset recovery, family disputes with financial dimensions. If there's a legal angle to exploit, she'll find it. Victoria Harrington was not what I expected. 60 years old, silver-haired, dressed in an understated gray suit that probably cost more than my car. She listened to my entire story without interrupting. The 5 years of support, the Pacific Horizon discovery, the emails from Jenny Martindale, the annotated photos of my exploitation. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long moment, her fingers steepled under her chin. Mrs. Flores, I want to be honest with you. From a purely legal standpoint, your options are limited. My heart sank. What do you mean? The money you gave your son and daughter-in-law was given voluntarily. No loan agreements, no promissory notes, no documentation of expected repayment. In the eyes of the law, these were gifts. Gifts cannot be recovered simply because the recipient turned out to be ungrateful. But they lied to me. They manufactured emergencies. They told me the business was failing when it was thriving. Fraud is difficult to prove in family contexts. They could argue that they genuinely believed the business was struggling, or that their perception of their financial situation was different from the objective reality. Without explicit false statements that directly induce specific payments, we'd have trouble building a civil case. I felt the familiar weight of helplessness settling over me. So there's nothing I can do. Victoria smiled, a sharp, predatory expression that transformed her face entirely. I didn't say that. I said your legal options are limited, but there are other avenues worth exploring. She opened the folder I'd provided, pulling out the printed email about the Henderson Flores Family Foundation. This is interesting. Your daughter-in-law represented to Eastside Preparatory Academy that donations came from a registered family foundation. I've checked. No such foundation exists. She claimed tax deductions for charitable contributions that were actually personal gifts from you. That's fraud? That's tax fraud. The IRS takes a dim view of fabricated charitable deductions, especially when they involve fake foundations. If we could document the full extent of this misrepresentation, I have documentation. Bank records showing the money came from my accounts. Emails where Ashley discusses the foundation with the school, and screenshots of her annotated photos, showing she knew exactly where the money came from. Victoria's smile widened. That's very useful. Tax fraud isn't a civil matter I can pursue on your behalf, but it is something that could be reported to the appropriate authorities. The IRS has a whistleblower program. Anonymous tips are investigated. What would happen to them? If the IRS finds sufficient evidence of tax fraud, they would face audits, penalties, potentially criminal charges. It depends on the scale and the intent. She paused. Based on what you've shown me, the scale is significant. 5 years of fraudulent deductions could amount to hundreds of thousands in misrepresented income. I thought about Derek and Ashley, so confident in their untouchability, so certain that their clever schemes would never catch up with them. What else? I asked. Victoria pulled out another document. The corporate registration for Pacific Horizon Holdings. The Nevada LLC is troubling for a different reason. Your son reported income from his marketing business on his personal taxes, but if he was funneling significant revenue through Pacific Horizon to avoid taxation, that's another layer of fraud. Corporate and personal. Can that be proven? With a forensic accountant and subpoena power, yes. The problem is getting subpoena power without an active legal case. She leaned forward, which brings me to my actual recommendation. I'm listening. You mentioned that your daughter-in-law has built a public persona around being a self-made success. Instagram, newspaper profiles, a lifestyle brand.
Correct. Yes, 47,000 followers. She sells candles and home goods. People who build their businesses on personal branding are vulnerable in a particular way. Their income depends on their reputation. If that reputation is damaged, if, for example, credible evidence emerged that their self-made story was entirely fabricated, the financial consequences could be severe. I understood what she was suggesting. You're talking about going public. I'm talking about ensuring that the people who have been deceived by your daughter-in-law's false narrative have access to the truth. Journalists, business partners, followers who have purchased products based on trust in her story. Victoria's eyes were steady. Truth is not defamation, Mrs. Flores. Everything you have is documented. Emails in their own words, bank records, corporate filings. If you choose to share that truth, there's very little they could do to stop you. They could sue me. They could try, but discovery in a defamation case would require them to open their books. Every financial record, every communication. The very act of suing you would expose everything they've tried to hide. She smiled again. In my experience, people with secrets don't sue, they settle, they negotiate. They do anything to keep the truth from becoming public record. I sat with this for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision before me. What would you recommend as a next step? 2 things. First, I want you to meet with my colleague Raymond Okonkwo. He's a forensic accountant who specializes in fraud investigation. He can analyze the financial records you've obtained and create a comprehensive picture of exactly how much was taken and where it went. That documentation will be essential, whatever path you choose. And second, I want you to think about what outcome you actually want. Is it money? Legally recovering the $228,000 would be extremely difficult. Is it revenge? Public exposure would certainly damage them, but it might also damage you, emotionally, socially. Or is it something else? I thought about Emma and Oliver. Their small faces looking at me with the doubt Ashley had planted, the possibility that I might never see them again. I want my grandchildren, I said quietly. I want them to know the truth about who I am and what I did for their parents. And I want Derek and Ashley to face consequences for what they've done. Victoria nodded slowly. Those are achievable goals, but they require strategy, patience, and a willingness to see this through to the end, no matter how uncomfortable it becomes. I'm willing. Then let's get to work. Raymond Okonkwo was the opposite of Victoria Harrington in every visible way. Young, energetic, dressed in jeans and a sweater despite the formal surroundings. But his mind worked with the same precision. He spent 3 hours with me, going through every financial document I brought. Bank statements, credit card bills, the Pacific Horizon records from Thomas Brennan, the annotated photos from Jenny Martindale's flash drive. By the end, he created a spreadsheet that made me sick to look at. The total documented transfers from your accounts to Derek and Ashley Flores between 2019 and 2024 is $228,400, he said, pointing to a highlighted cell. Of that amount, approximately $127,000 can be directly traced to Pacific Horizon Holdings through timing analysis, transfers that occurred within days of deposits to the LLC. So they took my money and immediately hid it. Essentially, yes, but it's actually worse than that. He scrolled to another section of the spreadsheet. Pacific Horizon Holdings also received approximately $95,000 from the Henderson Family Trust during the same period. Combined with your contributions, the LLC now holds, based on my estimates, between $380,000 and $420,000 in assets. I stared at the number. More money than I had left for my entire retirement, sitting in an account my son had hidden from me while asking for help paying his mortgage. Here's the interesting part, Raymond continued. Pacific Horizon made several investment purchases that don't make sense for a legitimate holding company. Real estate in Idaho, a partnership stake in a restaurant in Spokane, a vintage car, a 1967 Corvette, purchased for $87,000 last year. A car, registered to an address in Nevada, but physically located at a storage facility in Bellevue. I found photos of it on a collector's forum. Your son posted about it under a pseudonym. He pulled up a screenshot. Beautiful vehicle, if you're into that sort of thing. I looked at the car. Red, gleaming, impeccably restored. Purchased with hidden money. while Derek cried to me about not being able to afford his children's school tuition. The car is particularly useful, Raymond said, because it's a physical asset, harder to hide than money in a bank account. If there were ever a legal action that resulted in asset seizure, you're saying the car could be taken from them. I'm saying the car is evidence of where the money went.
And evidence has power, regardless of whether it leads to legal action. The third member of my war council was someone Victoria Harrington introduced as a specialist in reputation management. Her name was Sandra Chen, no relation to me, despite the shared surname, and she worked from a small office in Capitol Hill that looked more like a tech startup than a consulting firm.
Public exposure is a weapon, Sandra explained. But like any weapon, it can backfire if used carelessly.
The goal isn't just to hurt your targets. It's to hurt them in ways that achieve your objectives while protecting you. What do you mean by protecting me? If you go public with accusations against your son and daughter-in-law, they'll respond. They'll claim you're mentally unstable. They've already laid the groundwork with the dementia story. They'll say you're bitter, vindictive, a scorned grandmother trying to destroy her family. Some people will believe them. So what do? Sandra leaned forward. You don't make accusations. You share evidence. There's a crucial difference. Accusations can be denied. Evidence speaks for itself. She pulled up her laptop, showing me a mock-up of what looked like a simple website. What I'm proposing is a documented timeline. Dates, amounts, screenshots, bank records. No editorializing, no emotional language. Just facts, presented chronologically, with links to supporting documents. The story tells itself. I looked at the mock-up. It was clean, professional, devastating. 5 years of exploitation laid out in clinical detail, impossible to dismiss as the ravings of a bitter old woman. The beauty of this approach, Sandra continued, is that it's defensible. Everything on the site would be factually accurate and documented. If they try to sue for defamation, they'd have to prove that something you posted was false. And since everything is true, they can't. Exactly. They'd also have to go through discovery, which would expose even more of their financial history. Most people in their position would rather take the reputational hit than risk that kind of scrutiny. How would people even find this website? Sandra smiled. That's where the strategy comes in. We don't blast it everywhere immediately. We start with targeted distribution. Patricia Morrison at the Seattle Times, the journalist who wrote the puff piece about Ashley's self-made success. She'd be very interested to learn she was deceived. The development office at Eastside Prep, who think they've been receiving donations from a legitimate family foundation. Ashley's brand partners, who've associated their products with her carefully constructed image. And then we wait. The information spreads organically. People talk. Screenshots circulate. Eventually, someone with a larger platform picks up the story. By the time your son and daughter-in-law realize what's happening, the damage is already done. It was elegant, surgical, a way to ensure the truth came out without making myself look like a vindictive old woman. But something was bothering me. What about my grandchildren? If this goes public, they'll see it eventually. They'll know their grandmother destroyed their parents' reputation. Sandra's expression softened. That's a real consideration. But let me ask you something. What's the alternative? You stay silent. They grow up believing you abandoned them, that you were toxic and less than, and whatever other lies Ashley is teaching them. Is that better? I don't know. The truth is going to come out eventually, Mrs. Flores. Either you control how and when, or they do. And if they control it, you'll be the villain forever. She was right. I knew she was right. But the thought of Emma and Oliver reading those documents, seeing the ugly reality of their parents' behavior. There's another option, Sandra said quietly. We hold the information in reserve. Use it as leverage rather than a weapon. What do you mean? I mean you approach your son and daughter-in-law with evidence of what you know. You make clear that you could destroy their reputation, their business, possibly their freedom, but you're willing to negotiate instead, in exchange for guaranteed access to your grandchildren. Written agreements. Supervised visits if necessary. Whatever it takes to maintain that relationship. Blackmail. Negotiation. You have something they want. Silence. They have something you want. Access to Emma and Oliver. A trade that benefits everyone. I thought about it. The idea of sitting across from Derek and Ashley, laying out the evidence, watching their faces as they realized how completely exposed they were.
There was a certain appeal to it, but there was also risk.
If I showed my hand and they called my bluff, if they calculated that I wouldn't actually go public because of the grandchildren, I'd have nothing. I need to think about this, I said.
Of course. Take your time. But Mrs. Flores, Sandra met my eyes. Whatever you decide, decide soon. The longer you wait, the more time they have to prepare, to spin the narrative, to turn people against you before you've had a chance to speak. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, looking at the evidence spread across my coffee table. Financial documents, email printouts, the flash drive from Jenny Martindale, Raymond's spreadsheet showing exactly how much had been taken and where it had gone. $228,400 from me, $95,000 from the Hendersons, a hidden fortune of over $400,000, a lifestyle built entirely on lies. Outside my window, the lights of Bellevue glittered against the November darkness. Somewhere in those lights was the house I'd helped buy, the kitchen I'd helped renovate, the life I'd helped fund. Somewhere out there, my grandchildren were sleeping in beds paid for by my sacrifice, dreaming dreams unclouded by the ugliness of what their parents had done. I picked up my phone and looked at the blocked numbers. Derek, Ashley,
The Henderson family home. All of them silenced, cut off, made irrelevant to my daily existence. But they weren't irrelevant. They were still out there, living their beautiful lives, spending money that should have been mine, teaching my grandchildren that their grandmother was toxic and less and not worth knowing. I thought about what Victoria had said. What outcome do you actually want? Money. The money was gone. Even if I could somehow claw it back legally, the years I'd spent earning it were lost forever. Revenge. There was satisfaction in the idea of watching their world crumble, but satisfaction wasn't the same as fulfillment. What I wanted, what I really wanted, was justice. Not revenge, but accountability. The truth told. The lies exposed. A chance for my grandchildren to know who I really was. Not the monster their mother had invented. And if I was being honest with myself, I wanted something else too. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. The shock of betrayal. The pain of realizing that people you loved had been using you. The cold clarity of understanding that you were nothing to them, but a resource to be exploited. I wanted them to know how it felt to be treated as less. I picked up my phone and dialed Sandra Chen's number. Mrs. Flores. It's nearly midnight. I've made my decision. A pause. Which approach? Both. I want the website ready to launch. All the documentation, all the evidence, everything organized and verified. But I don't want to launch it immediately. You want leverage. I want options. I want to sit across from my son and daughter-in-law with the full weight of what I know, and I want to give them one chance. One chance to do the right thing. To give me access to my grandchildren. To acknowledge what they've done. And if they refuse, I looked at the evidence spread across my table. The years of lies, the stolen money, the calculated cruelty. Then I release everything, the website, tips to the IRS, information to Patricia Morrison and the development office at Eastside Prep. All of it. All at once. That's a significant escalation. They escalated first. They just don't know it yet. Sandra was quiet for a moment. When do you want to do this? I checked my calendar. Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. The holiday I'd spent alone last year while they celebrated with the Hendersons. Thanksgiving, I said. I want to meet with them the week before. Give them time to think about it. Then, if they choose wrong, their holiday will be very different than planned. Yes, it will. I hung up and sat in the darkness a while longer, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks until they learned that the old cow had teeth. And God help them if they made me use them. I chose the location carefully. Not my home. Too personal, too vulnerable. Not their home. I'd never set foot in that house again. Not a restaurant or coffee shop. Too public. Too many witnesses for a conversation that needed to remain private. In the end, I rented a conference room at a business center in Bellevue. Neutral territory. Professional surroundings. The kind of space where contracts were signed and deals were made. The kind of space where power was exercised. I arrived an hour early to set up. The conference table was long and polished, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I arranged the evidence in neat stacks at my end. Bank statements, email printouts, corporate filings, the annotated photos from Ashley's personal collection.
Victoria Harrington had offered to attend for legal support, but I'd declined. This was family business. Whatever happened in this room needed to happen between us, without lawyers to hide behind. At exactly 2 p.m., the door opened. Derek came in first, his face a careful mask of neutral concern. He was wearing the charcoal suit I bought him for his 30th birthday, a detail that felt like salt in a wound. Ashley followed close behind, her expression harder to read. Suspicious, calculating, trying to figure out what game I was playing. Mom. Derek's voice was cautious. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Sit down. They exchanged a glance but complied, taking seats at the opposite end of the table. The distance between us felt appropriate, symbolic. I want to be clear about something before we begin, I said. This is not a negotiation about whether you've wronged me. That's already established. This is a conversation about what happens next. Ashley's eyes narrowed. Margaret, I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset. I was upset 6 weeks ago. Now I'm informed. I tapped the stack of documents in front of me. Do you know what these are? Some kind of evidence, presumably. Ashley's voice dripped with condescension. Derek mentioned you've been playing detective. These are 5 years of bank records documenting every transfer I made to you. These are corporate filings for Pacific Horizon Holdings, including the amendment that added you as co-owner, Ashley. These are screenshots of text messages where you discuss manipulating me. The old cow, I believe you called me. And these. I pulled out the annotated photos. These are your personal records of my exploitation, organized by date, with commentary about how you actually spent the money I gave you. The color drained from Ashley's face. Derek went very still. Where did you get those? Ashley's voice was sharp, frightened. Does it matter? The point is, I have them. I have everything. 5 years of documentation proving that you systematically lied to me about your finances, manufactured emergencies to extract money, and hid over $400,000 in assets while claiming you couldn't afford your mortgage. This is insane. Ashley stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You can't just sit down. Something in my voice made her comply. I'd never spoken to anyone like that in my life, but I'd also never had this much power before. Here's what I know, I continued. Pacific Horizon Holdings received approximately $127,000 in transfers that can be traced directly to my contributions. The Henderson Family Trust contributed another $95,000. Your struggling business reported record revenue during the years you claimed to be drowning. You purchased a vintage Corvette for $87,000, while I was eating store-brand groceries to afford your children's tuition. Derek found his voice. Mom, I can explain. I'm not finished. I also know about the Henderson Flores Family Foundation, the one that doesn't exist. The one Ashley invented to claim tax deductions for charitable donations that were actually my personal gifts. That's tax fraud, Derek. Federal tax fraud. Ashley's hand gripped the table edge. You can't prove any of this. I have emails where you discuss it with the school development office. I have bank records showing the money came from my accounts. I have everything I need to file a report with the IRS whistleblower program. I let that sink in. Do you know what happens when the IRS investigates tax fraud? They don't just look at 1 year. They look at everything. Every return you've ever filed. Every deduction you've ever claimed. Every inconsistency between your reported income and your actual spending. You wouldn't. Derek's voice cracked. Mom, this would destroy us. The kids. The kids are why I'm here instead of at the IRS office. I softened my voice slightly. I don't want to destroy you, Derek. Despite everything, you're still my son. But I am going to get what I deserve. And what I deserve is the truth, and access to my grandchildren. Access to the kids. Ashley laughed bitterly. After what you've done, spying on us, hiring investigators, threatening us with what I've done. I felt the anger rising but kept my voice controlled. Ashley, you told my grandchildren that I was born less than you. You've been telling people I have dementia. You called me a cow and laughed about how easy I was to manipulate. And you've taken over $200,000 from me while treating me like garbage. We never asked you for money. You volunteered. Because Derek told me you were struggling. Because he called me crying about not being able to make ends meet. Because I believed, stupidly, naively, that my son was telling me the truth. I looked at Derek. Were you, ever, was any of it real? Derek couldn't meet my eyes. His silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen. I said, pulling out a document from my folder. I've prepared an agreement. It's simple. You grant me guaranteed access to Emma and Oliver, minimum 2 weekends per month, plus holidays on a rotating basis. You stop telling people I have dementia. You stop poisoning my grandchildren against me.
And you never, ever asked me for money again. Ashley grabbed the document, scanning it rapidly.
This is ridiculous. You can't legally force us to. You're right. I can't force you to do anything, but if you refuse. I pulled out another document.
A printout of the website Sandra had designed.
This goes live tomorrow. Every email, every bank statement, every screenshot of Ashley's annotated photos, all of it organized chronologically with links to supporting documents. Derek looked at the printout. His face went gray. That's defamation, Ashley said, but her voice had lost its confidence. We'll sue you into oblivion. Go ahead. Discovery in a defamation case would require you to open every financial record you've ever kept. Every communication. The very act of suing me would expose everything you've tried to hide. I smiled.
Victoria Harrington, my attorney, is quite looking forward to it, actually. You hired Victoria Harrington? Derek looked genuinely shocked. Mom, she's the best in the Pacific Northwest. Yes, I know. It's amazing what you can afford when you stop giving away $250,000 to ungrateful children.
The room went silent. Ashley and Derek stared at the documents spread across the table. The evidence of their schemes, laid out with clinical precision. This goes beyond the website, I continued. I've also prepared a detailed report for the IRS and a letter to Patricia Morrison at the Seattle Times, explaining how she was deceived by Ashley's self-made success story, and documentation for Eastside Preps Board, showing that their foundation donations were actually private gifts laundered through a fraudulent entity. You'd really do this? Derek's voice was barely above a whisper.
You'd destroy your own son.
You destroyed yourself, Derek. You made choices. Year after year, lie after lie. I'm just giving people the information they need to see those choices clearly. Ashley grabbed Derek's arm.
We need to talk to our lawyer before we agree to anything.
Of course. Take all the time you need. I gathered the documents, leaving only the access agreement on the table. You have until Friday at 5 p.m.
If I haven't received a signed copy by then, the website goes live at 6 o'clock. The IRS report goes out Monday morning, and Patricia Morrison gets her letter before Thanksgiving. I stood up, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Control.
The sense that I was finally the one making decisions, instead of reacting to everyone else's. One more thing, I said from the doorway.
If you're thinking about calling my bluff, wondering if I really have the nerve to go through with this,
ask yourself how I got this meeting, how I found out about Pacific Horizon, how I obtained copies of your private text messages and photos.
I've been preparing for this conversation for 6 weeks. I have resources you don't know about, and evidence you haven't seen.
Don't make the mistake of underestimating me again. I left them sitting in that conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of their carefully constructed lies. The call came at 9:47 that evening, not from Derek or Ashley. From Caroline Henderson.
Margaret. Her voice was ice.
We need to talk. Good evening, Caroline. I was wondering when you'd get involved. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this ends now. You've upset my daughter terribly.
She's been crying for hours. Has she? How distressing. Don't be flip with me. I know your type. You think because you have some documents, you have power over us. You're wrong. My husband has connections throughout this city. One phone call, and your little evidence becomes worthless. Your attorney drops you. Your investigator finds other clients. You become what you've always been, a nobody. A Chinese widow living off her dead husband's insurance money, desperately trying to feel important. The racism was so casual, so automatic, that it almost didn't register. Almost. Caroline, I'm going to give you some advice, free of charge, since you clearly can't afford good counsel, despite all your money. I kept my voice steady. What you just said to me, about my type, about being a Chinese widow, about my value as a person, that's exactly the kind of thing that plays very poorly in public forums. Newspapers, social media, depositions. Are you recording this? I'm suggesting you consider your words more carefully in the future. Because everything, and I mean everything, is documentable now.
Every phone call, every text, every email. I've learned that lesson well from your daughter. A pause. When Caroline spoke again, her voice had changed. Less confident, more cautious. What do you actually want, Margaret? Money. We can discuss a reasonable settlement. I want what I said in the meeting. Access to my grandchildren. An end to the lies about my mental health. Acknowledgement that I'm not toxic or less than or any of the other things you've taught my son to believe about me. And if we give you that, the documentation goes away. It stays in my possession, insurance against future misbehavior.
But it doesn't go public, doesn't go to the IRS, doesn't go to the newspapers. As long as our agreement is honored. Another pause. I could almost hear her calculating, weighing options, looking for angles. I'll need to discuss this with Cody.
And with Derek and Ashley, of course. Of course. You have until Friday at 5 p.m., the same deadline I gave your daughter. That's not enough time to. Then I suggest you start discussing immediately.
Good night, Caroline.
I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from exhilaration. For 63 years, I'd been polite, accommodating.
The good Chinese daughter, the good wife, the good mother who never made waves. It felt incredible to finally make waves. The next 3 days were the longest of my life.
I went through the motions of normal existence, grocery shopping, garden maintenance, the quiet routines that had structured my lonely years since Richard's death. But underneath, my mind raced through scenarios. They would agree. They had to agree. The alternative was too devastating. They would refuse. Call my bluff. Calculate that I loved my grandchildren too much to actually destroy their parents. They would counteroffer. Try to negotiate terms more favorable to them. Drag this out until I lost my nerve. They would attack. Find some way to discredit me, undermine my evidence, turn the narrative against me. I checked my email obsessively. Jumped every time my phone buzzed. Slept in fragments, waking at odd hours to review documents I'd already memorized. On Wednesday, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 2 sentences typed in the center. You have no idea what you've started. This ends badly for you. I photographed it, sent it to Victoria Harrington, and added it to my evidence file. Threats were useful. Threats proved that I was getting to them. Thursday passed with no word. I began to prepare for the possibility that they would refuse. Sandra Chen and I reviewed the website one final time. The IRS documentation was ready to submit. Patricia Morrison's letter was drafted and addressed. Friday morning, I woke at 5 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. By noon, I was pacing my living room, unable to focus on anything. At 3:47 p.m., my phone rang. Derek's number. I answered on the second ring. Yes. Mom. His voice was flat, defeated. We'll sign the agreement. My knees went weak. I sat down heavily on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. All of it.
No modifications? All of it. Ashley's attorney reviewed the terms and said we'd be stupid to refuse. The Henderson lawyers agreed. A bitter laugh. Apparently, Cody's connections weren't as powerful as he thought. Victoria Harrington has a reputation. When can I expect the signed documents? I'm dropping them off tonight. I'll leave them in your mailbox by 6 p.m. And the children. When can I see them? A pause. When Derek spoke again, his voice cracked slightly. This weekend, if you want. Saturday morning. We'll drop them off at 10 o'clock. You can have them until Sunday evening. Tears sprang to my eyes. Emma and Oliver. I was going to see them, hold them, begin the long process of rebuilding what Ashley had tried to destroy. Thank you, Derek. Don't thank me. You gave me no choice. His voice hardened. But Mom, this isn't over. You've made enemies today. Powerful people with long memories. You might have won this battle, but the war is just beginning. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. The Hendersons don't forget. And Ashley. He trailed off. Just watch your back. That's all I'm saying. He hung up without goodbye. I sat in the silence of my living room, phone still in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. I'd won. Against all odds. Against a family with more money and connections than I could dream of. I'd won. But Derek's warning echoed in my mind. This isn't over.
The war is just beginning. Outside, the November afternoon was fading toward evening. In an hour, the signed agreement would be in my mailbox. Tomorrow, I would see my grandchildren.
And somewhere in Kirkland and Medina, the people I'd just humiliated were licking their wounds and planning their revenge. I got up, poured myself a glass of wine, and began preparing for the battle to come. The documents arrived at 5:52 p.m. Derek's car never even stopped. He slowed just enough to shove the envelope through my mailbox slot, then accelerated away into the darkness. I carried the envelope inside like it was made of glass. Sat at my kitchen table. Opened it slowly, my hands trembling slightly. 3 signatures. Derek's familiar scrawl. Ashley's sharp, angular handwriting. And at the bottom, a witness signature I didn't recognize, probably their attorney. The agreement was real, binding, enforceable. I had won. I called Victoria Harrington to confirm receipt. Called Sandra Chen to stand down the website launch. Called Thomas Brennan to let him know the immediate crisis had passed. Then I poured myself another glass of wine and sat in the darkness, looking at the document that had just changed everything. Tomorrow, I would see Emma and Oliver. Tomorrow, I would begin rebuilding. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel what I'd actually accomplished. A 63-year-old widow, armed with nothing but the truth and the willingness to use it, had brought a wealthy, connected family to their knees. They would hate me for it. They would probably try to punish me. Derek's warning had been clear enough. But for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't afraid of them. They should be afraid of me. Done to 7 of 10 complete. Script progress, 70%. Written, 92 minutes of. Audio, 21,800 words total. Remaining, 3 parts. Heroes state, victorious but vigilant. The first battle is won. Tension level. Next part, the counterattack. The Hendersons strike back. Type continue to proceed to part 8, or rewrite, add details, shorten. Continue. 22 декабря.
Plotted antagonistic counterattack escalating narrative tension toward climax. The user wants me to continue with part 8 of the story. This is the psychological warfare section, according to the blueprint, where the antagonists launch their counterattack against the protagonist. Let me continue the story with the Henderson family striking back, attempting to undermine Margaret through various means, social manipulation, attempts to turn people against her, possibly involving the grandchildren visit going wrong, etc. I need to maintain the same quality, pacing, and tension level while building toward the climax in Part 9. Part 8, the counterattack. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in November fog, the kind that softened the edges of everything and made the world feel smaller, more intimate. I'd been awake since before dawn, unable to sleep, running through preparations in my mind. The guest room was ready. Fresh sheets on the beds, extra blankets in case they got cold, the refrigerator stocked with Emma's favorite yogurt, and the organic apple juice Oliver preferred. Board games pulled from storage, dusted off and arranged on the coffee table. Snickerdoodles, real ones this time, cooling on the kitchen counter. At 9:47 a.m., a car pulled into my driveway. Not Derek's Tesla. A silver BMW I didn't recognize. Ashley got out first, then opened the back door to help the children with their overnight bags. She was dressed immaculately as always. Camel coat, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, but there was something different about her posture. Something coiled and dangerous. I opened my front door and stepped onto the porch, my heart hammering against my ribs. Grandma Margaret. Oliver broke free from Ashley's grip and ran toward me, his small face alight with joy. I caught him in my arms and held him tight, breathing in the smell of his shampoo, feeling the solid reality of his small body against mine. Hello, sweetheart. I missed you so much. Emma approached more slowly, her expression cautious. At 7, she was old enough to sense the tension between the adults, old enough to have absorbed some of Ashley's poison. She stopped a few feet away, studying me with eyes that held more wariness than a child her age should know. Hi, Grandma Margaret. Hi, baby. I'm so glad you're here. Ashley walked up the path, Oliver's overnight bag slung over her shoulder. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Margaret, the children have been looking forward to this. I'm sure they have. We stood facing each other on my porch, the children between us like territory to be contested.
Ashley set down the bag with deliberate care.
I should mention, Emma has a slight cold. She might need extra rest today, and Oliver's been having nightmares lately. If he wakes up scared, he likes his blue blanket.
It's in the bag. I'll take good care of them. I'm sure you will. Ashley's voice dropped, low enough that only I could hear.
Enjoy this while it lasts, Margaret. Every moment.
Because I promise you, it won't last long.
Before I could respond, she turned and walked back to her car. The engine started. She pulled away without looking back. I watched until the BMW disappeared around the corner, then looked down at my grandchildren. Who wants cookies for breakfast? Oliver's face lit up. Even Emma cracked a small smile. It was a start.
The weekend passed like a dream I didn't want to wake from.
Saturday morning, we baked another batch of cookies together, the children's hands sticky with dough, flour dusting every surface of my kitchen.
Emma relaxed gradually, her wariness fading as she remembered who I really was. Not the monster her mother had described, but the grandmother who let her lick the spoon and didn't care about messes. Saturday afternoon, we drove to the park despite the cold. Oliver ran himself exhausted on the playground, while Emma and I walked around the pond, throwing bread to ducks that probably shouldn't be eating bread, but neither of us cared.
Grandma Margaret? Emma's voice was small, tentative. Yes, sweetheart. Mommy said you were sick. In your brain. Is that true? My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. No, baby. I'm not sick.
Sometimes adults have disagreements, and they say things that aren't quite accurate, but my brain is perfectly fine.
Oh, she processed this, her small brow furrowing. Because Mommy said we might not see you anymore because you were too sick to remember us. But you remembered me. I will always remember you, Emma. Always.
No matter what anyone tells you. She slipped her hand into mine, and we walked the rest of the way in silence. But it was a comfortable silence. A healing silence. Saturday evening, we ordered pizza and watched movies until both children fell asleep on my couch. A tangle of blankets and small limbs and peaceful faces. I covered them gently and sat in my armchair, watching them breathe, wondering how I had ever survived months without this. Sunday morning, I made pancakes shaped like animals. Oliver wanted a lion. Emma requested a butterfly. My attempts were laughably bad. The lion looked more like a blob, the butterfly like a lopsided figure eight, but they ate them with enthusiasm anyway. Drowning everything in syrup, I pretended not to notice.
Grandma Margaret? Oliver asked through a mouthful of pancake. Chew first, sweetheart. He chewed dramatically, then swallowed. Can we come back next weekend, too? I hope so, baby. That's the plan. Good. Because I don't like staying home on weekends anymore. Mommy and Daddy are always fighting now. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Fighting? They yell a lot. And Daddy sleeps on the couch sometimes. Mommy says it's because of stress, but Emma says it's because of you. Emma kicked her brother under the table. Oliver, you weren't supposed to say that. But, it's true. I heard Mommy tell Daddy that Grandma Margaret ruined everything. I set down my fork carefully, my mind racing. Fighting. Sleeping on the couch, the stress of being exposed fracturing the partnership that had seemed so solid. Listen to me, both of you. I leaned forward, meeting their eyes. Whatever is happening between your parents is not because of anything you did, and it's not something you need to worry about.
Adults sometimes have problems that have nothing to do with their children. Your job is just to be kids. My job is to make sure you're loved and safe. Okay? They nodded, but I could see the anxiety in their faces. They were too young to carry this kind of weight. Ashley had done this. Her schemes, her lies, her manipulation. It was all coming apart, and the children were caught in the wreckage. For the first time, I felt something other than satisfaction at my victory. I felt fear. Fear that in winning my battle with Ashley, I might have made things worse for Emma and Oliver. The counterattack began Monday morning. I was watering my indoor plants when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, Seattle area code. Mrs. Flores? This is Detective Sarah Okonjo with the Bellevue Police Department. Do you have a few minutes to talk? My stomach dropped. What is this about?
We've received a complaint regarding your conduct. I'd like to ask you some questions. What kind of complaint? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come to the station today?
Say, 2 p.m.? I agreed, my hands shaking as I hung up.
A complaint. From whom? About what? I called Victoria Harrington immediately. "Don't say anything without me present," she instructed. "I'll meet you at the station at 1:45.
And Margaret, don't panic. This is likely harassment, nothing more. But we need to take it seriously.
At 2 p.m., I sat in a small interview room at the Bellevue Police Department, Victoria beside me, facing Detective Akonjo across a metal table.
Mrs. Flores, we received a complaint from Caroline Henderson alleging that you've been engaged in stalking and harassment of her family, specifically her daughter Ashley Flores and son-in-law Derek Flores.
Stalking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's absurd. According to Mrs. Henderson, you hired a private investigator to surveil her family.
You obtained private communications through illegal means. You've made threats of public exposure and financial destruction, and you've coerced them into signing an agreement under duress.
Victoria placed a hand on my arm, signaling me to stay quiet. "Detective, my client has done nothing illegal."
She engaged a licensed private investigator to research business entities, a completely lawful activity. The communications she obtained were provided voluntarily by a former employee of Ashley Flores, and the agreement in question was negotiated between adults and signed freely, without any coercion. The Hendersons claim otherwise. They say Mrs. Flores threatened to destroy their reputation and report them to the IRS unless they complied with her demands. "Threatening to report actual crimes is not itself a crime," Victoria replied smoothly. "If Mr. and Mrs. Flores committed tax fraud, and my client has substantial evidence suggesting they did, then discussing that evidence is protected speech. The agreement my client proposed was an alternative to legal action. That's negotiation, not coercion." Detective Okonjo's expression remained neutral, but I thought I detected a flicker of sympathy. "Mrs. Flores, have you ever surveilled any member of the Flores or Henderson families personally? Followed them, photographed them, appeared at locations where they might feel unsafe?" "No, absolutely not." "Have you made any threats of physical harm?" "Never." "Have you contacted any of them after being asked to cease contact?" I thought about this carefully. "I contacted my son Derek to arrange a meeting. He accepted. I haven't contacted any of them since the agreement was signed, except to confirm the children's pickup times." Detective Akonjo made notes, then looked up. "Mrs. Flores, I'm going to be honest with you. Based on what I've heard today, I don't see evidence of criminal stalking or harassment. Mrs. Henderson's complaint appears to be more about a family dispute than any illegal activity." Victoria nodded. "Which is what I suspected." However, the detective's expression grew serious. "The Hendersons are persistent. They've indicated they intend to pursue this further, possibly through civil channels, possibly through additional complaints. I'd advise you to document all your interactions carefully and avoid any contact that could be interpreted as threatening or unwanted." "I understand. One more thing." Detective Okonjo hesitated. "This is off the record, but the Hendersons have a lot of influence in this community. Cody Henderson sits on several charitable boards, including the Police Benevolent Association. I'm not saying that affects how we do our job, but I am saying, be careful. People with money and connections can make life difficult for those without." It was a warning, a kind one, but a warning nonetheless. The Hendersons had fired their first shot, and they had no intention of stopping. The second attack came 3 days later. I was checking my email when I noticed something strange in my inbox. A message from Eastside Preparatory Academy, but not addressed to me as a grandparent, addressed to me as a concerned community member. "Dear community member, it has come to our attention that certain allegations are being circulated regarding one of our donor families. We want to assure you that Eastside Prep takes all concerns seriously and is conducting a thorough internal review. In the meantime, we ask that community members refrain from spreading unverified information that could harm the reputation of our families and institution. Eastside Prep values privacy, discretion, and the well-being of our students above all else. If you have concerns about any family in our community, please direct them to our administration rather than sharing them publicly. Warm regards, Dr. Patricia Goldstein, head of school." Someone had contacted the school about my evidence. Someone had warned them I might go public. I called Sandra Chen. "They're trying to get ahead of the story," she confirmed after reading the email. "Preemptive reputation management, classic move." But how did they know I had information about the school? I never mentioned Eastside Prep in our meeting. "They're smart, Margaret.
They know you have the emails about the fake foundation. They're guessing you might share them with the school and trying to discredit you before you do. So what do? Nothing yet. We wait. They're making noise, but they can't stop the truth from coming out if we choose to release it.
The agreement doesn't prevent you from sharing documentation, only from actively pursuing legal action against them. I thought the agreement was supposed to end this. Sandra's voice was gentle.
The agreement gave you access to your grandchildren. That's what you wanted, and you got it. But the Hendersons' wounded pride is a separate issue. They lost. Publicly. Humiliatingly. And people like them don't accept defeat gracefully. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the email from Dr. Goldstein. They were circling, testing my defenses, looking for weaknesses. The war Derek had predicted was fully underway. The third attack was personal. Friday afternoon, I drove to Kirkland to pick up Emma and Oliver for our second weekend together. The arrangement called for me to collect them at 4 p.m. from Derek and Ashley's house, a prospect I've been dreading all week. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different, darker somehow, despite the November afternoon light. Curtains drawn. No Christmas decorations, even though Thanksgiving had just passed. Derek answered the door. He looked terrible, unshaven, circles under his eyes, his clothes rumpled like he'd slept in them. Mom, you're early. By 5 minutes.
Is everything okay?
Fine. Everything's fine. He stepped aside to let me in. The kids are upstairs getting their bags. I waited in the foyer, trying not to look at the kitchen I'd paid for or the furniture I'd helped select.
The house felt different, too. Colder. More tense.
Ashley descended the stairs, her face a mask of controlled hostility. Margaret. The children will be down in a moment. Thank you. Silence stretched between us.
Derek hovered near the door, clearly wanting me gone as quickly as possible. I should mention, Ashley said, her voice casual, that Oliver has been having some behavioral issues at school. His teacher called yesterday. Apparently he's been telling other children that his grandmother is fighting with his parents. I've never discussed our disagreements with the children. Haven't you?
Because Emma told me you had a very interesting conversation at the park last weekend. About mommy saying things that aren't accurate. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. She asked me directly if I was sick. If I had dementia.
What was I supposed to tell her? You were supposed to support the narrative we've established as a family. You mean the lie you invented to explain why I'd been cut off? Derek stepped between us. Can we not do this right now?
The kids will be down any second. But Ashley wasn't finished. I've been thinking about our arrangement, Margaret. 2 weekends a month seemed reasonable at first, but given the behavioral issues,
I'm not sure it's in the children's best interests.
My blood ran cold. You signed an agreement. Agreements can be modified, especially when circumstances change. Ashley smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. Oliver's teacher suggested he might benefit from more stability at home, less disruption to his routine. I'd hate to have to tell Dr. Goldstein that our family situation is affecting his performance at school. You wouldn't. I'm just thinking about what's best for the children, Margaret.
Isn't that what we all want?
Before I could respond, Emma and Oliver came thundering down the stairs, overnight bags in hand. Grandma Margaret. Oliver launched himself at me, nearly knocking me off balance.
I've been waiting all week.
Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Ashley watched our embrace with narrowed eyes. Have them back by Sunday at 5 o'clock. Not a minute later. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the kitchen without another word.
Derek walked me to my car, the children already buckled into the back seat. Mom, I'm sorry. She's not handling this well.
Is she threatening to take away my visitation? Derek looked at his shoes. She's exploring options.
Her lawyer says the agreement might not be as ironclad as Victoria made it sound. If we can demonstrate that the visits are causing harm to the children. The visits aren't harming them. Your lies are harming them. Your fighting is harming them.
Oliver told me you're sleeping on the couch. Derek's face flushed. That's none of your business. Those children are absolutely my business.
And if you think I'm going to stand by while Ashley manufactures reasons to take them away from me, just be careful, okay? Derek's voice dropped. Ashley has been on the phone with her parents every day since the agreement was signed. They're planning something. I don't know what, but I know it's not good.
Are you warning me? He met my eyes for the first time.
In that moment, I saw a flash of the son I remembered, the boy who brought me dandelions, the man who'd held my hand at Richard's funeral. I'm telling you to watch your back. That's all I can do. He turned and walked back to the house, shoulders hunched against the cold. I sat in my car for a long moment, watching him disappear inside, wondering if there was anything left of my son worth saving, or if Ashley had consumed him entirely. Grandma Margaret, Emma's voice from the back seat. Why are you crying? I wiped my eyes quickly. I'm not crying, sweetheart. Just allergies. Oh. She paused. Mommy cries a lot, too, now. She says it's allergies, too. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the house I'd paid for and the family I'd created, both of them crumbling into something I no longer recognized. That night, after the children were asleep, I called Victoria Harrington. They're going to try to take my visitation, I said without preamble. Ashley's claiming the visits are causing behavioral issues. She mentioned Oliver's teacher. Something about telling other kids that Grandma is fighting with his parents. Victoria sighed. I was afraid this might happen. The agreement is binding, but family courts are unpredictable. If they can convince a judge that the visitation arrangement is causing psychological harm to the children. But it's not. They love being here. They're happy. I know. And that will matter. But Margaret, the Hendersons have resources. They'll hire the best child psychologists, the best custody attorneys. They'll build a case that makes you look unstable, obsessive, potentially harmful. So what do? You document everything, every visit, every interaction, every positive moment with those children. And you start gathering your own expert opinions. Child development specialists who can testify to the value of grandparent relationships. Teachers who can speak to the children's well-being. Character witnesses who know you. This is going to cost money I don't have. I know. I'm sorry. Victoria paused. Margaret, there's something else you should consider. You have evidence of their fraud. The fake foundation, the tax manipulation, all of it. You agreed not to pursue legal action against them, but you didn't agree to stay silent forever. You're suggesting I use the evidence as leverage again. I'm suggesting you remind them what's at stake. If they push this custody battle, they open themselves up to scrutiny. Discovery goes both ways. And the documents you have could become very relevant if they try to paint you as the destabilizing influence on those children. It made sense, but something in me recoiled from the idea of weaponizing the truth again. The children will be caught in the middle, I said quietly. The children are already in the middle. Ashley put them there when she started poisoning them against you. The question is whether you're going to fight for your place in their lives, or let her push you out permanently. I thought about Oliver's face when he'd run to hug me, Emma's hand slipping into mine at the park, the sound of their laughter echoing through my quiet house. I'll fight, I said. Whatever it takes. Good. Then we have work to do. Can you come to my office Monday morning? We need to prepare for what comes next. I agreed and hung up, then sat in the darkness of my living room, listening to the soft sounds of my grandchildren sleeping in the next room. The Hendersons wanted war. Ashley wanted to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. Derek was too weak or too corrupted to stop any of it. But I had something none of them had anticipated. I had nothing left to lose. And I had every reason in the world to keep fighting. The invitation arrived 2 weeks before Christmas. Cream-colored envelope, elegant calligraphy, the Henderson family crest embossed in gold on the flap. I recognized it immediately, the same stationery Caroline used for all her society events. The Henderson family cordially invites you to our annual holiday charity gala, benefiting the Eastside Children's Foundation. Saturday, December 14th, 7 p.m. The Bellevue Club. At the bottom, handwritten in Caroline's distinctive script. Margaret, we should talk. Consider this an olive branch. See. I stared at the invitation for a long time, trying to decipher the trap. Because it was a trap, obviously. The Hendersons didn't extend olive branches. They extended nooses disguised as neckties. But Victoria Harrington saw an opportunity. They're inviting you into their territory, she said when I showed her the invitation. That's arrogant. It means they think they control the environment. But a public event with witnesses is actually advantageous for you. How so? If they try anything. Confrontation, humiliation, even just pointed comments.
You'll have a room full of their peers watching, and the Hendersons care very much about how they appear to their peers. You think I should go? Victoria smiled. I think you should absolutely go, and I think you should bring everything we've prepared. The Bellevue Club occupied a sprawling estate overlooking Lake Washington, its manicured grounds and Tudor-style architecture announcing old money with every brick and beam. I'd never been inside before. It was members only, and membership required the kind of pedigree I didn't possess. Tonight, I walked through the front doors like I owned the place. I dressed carefully. Not expensively. I couldn't compete with these women on that front, but elegantly. A simple black dress that Richard had always loved. Maria's pearl earrings, the ones I'd saved from all the years of financial chaos. My grandmother's jade bracelet, passed down through 3 generations of women who had survived worse than this. The ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and canapes that probably cost more per bite than my weekly grocery budget. And everywhere, the elite of Bellevue and Medina, dressed in their holiday finest, congratulating themselves on their generosity to the less fortunate. I spotted Caroline Henderson immediately. She stood near the center of the room, holding court in an emerald green gown that probably cost more than my car, surrounded by admirers who laughed at her every quip. Cody was beside her, silver-haired and distinguished in his tuxedo, the picture of patrician success. Ashley floated nearby in champagne silk, working the room with practiced charm. Derek hovered at the edges, looking uncomfortable in his formal wear. They hadn't seen me yet. Good. I wanted to observe before I engaged. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and moved to a quiet corner, watching the performance unfold. Mrs. Flores? I turned to find a woman about my age approaching, her expression curious but friendly. Gray hair swept into an elegant chignon, a simple strand of pearls at her throat. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Not exactly. I'm Patricia Morrison, Seattle Times lifestyle section. My champagne glass froze halfway to my lips. The journalist who'd written the puff piece about Ashley's self-made success. The one I'd almost sent a letter to before the agreement had paused my plans. I know who you are, I said carefully. I thought you might. Patricia glanced around the room, then lowered her voice. I received some interesting documents last week. Anonymous sender. A lot of information about the Flores and Henderson families that contradicts what I was told from my article. My heart began to pound. I didn't send those. I know. The postmark was Nevada. She met my eyes. But I suspect you might be able to verify their accuracy. Nevada, the state where Pacific Horizon Holdings was registered. Someone, Jenny Martindale, Thomas Brennan, someone else entirely, had decided to share the evidence without my involvement. What kind of documents? Bank records, corporate filings, emails discussing something called the Henderson Flores Family Foundation, which, according to IRS records, doesn't exist. Patricia's expression sharpened. Mrs. Flores, I wrote an article celebrating Ashley Flores as a self-made success story. If that article was based on lies she deliberately told me, I have a professional obligation to correct the record. Across the room, Caroline Henderson laughed at something Cody said, her champagne glass glittering in the chandelier light. What are you planning to do? I asked. I'm planning to ask some questions. Tonight, while everyone's here and relaxed. Patricia smiled slightly. Would you like to be present for that conversation? I looked at my champagne, then at the Henderson family in their expensive clothes, surrounded by their expensive friends, secure in their expensive lies. Yes, I said. I would. We waited until after dinner. The main course had been filet mignon with truffle reduction. A single bite probably cost more than my entire meal budget for the day. I pushed it around my plate, too nervous to eat, watching the Hendersons hold court at their central table. At 9:15 p.m., Patricia Morrison stood up and walked toward the Henderson table. I followed at a distance, positioning myself where I could see but wouldn't be immediately noticed. Caroline, Cody, wonderful event as always. Patricia's voice was warm, professional. Do you have a moment? I'm working on a follow-up piece about philanthropic families in the East Side community. Caroline's smile was gracious, practiced. Of course, Patricia. You know we're always happy to support good journalism. Wonderful. I wanted to ask about the Henderson Flores Family Foundation. The one that funded several donations to Eastside Prep. I've been trying to verify its tax-exempt status for my article, but I can't seem to find it in the IRS database. The temperature at the table dropped by 20 degrees. I'm not sure what you mean, Ashley said, her voice too bright. Our charitable giving goes through various channels. The foundation was specifically mentioned in correspondence with the school development office. I have copies of the emails. Patricia pulled out her phone. Would you like to see them? That won't be necessary. Cody's voice was sharp. I think you may be confused about. I don't think I am, Mr. Henderson. I also have bank records showing that the donations attributed to this foundation actually originated from Margaret Flores's personal accounts. Patricia looked up from her phone. The same Margaret Flores whose article I was told was the grandmother who didn't participate in family philanthropy. The one who, according to Ashley, didn't share our values about giving back. Silence. The nearby tables had gone quiet, guests turning to observe the unexpected drama. This is completely inappropriate. Caroline's voice cut like glass. This is a charity event, not an interrogation. You're right. I apologize for the timing. Patricia didn't sound apologetic at all. Perhaps we could schedule a formal interview. I'd love to give you an opportunity to respond before the correction runs. Correction. Ashley's face had gone pale. What correction? The correction to my original article. The one I'll be publishing, once I've verified the accuracy of the documents I received. Patricia tucked her phone away. I take my responsibility to readers very seriously, Mrs. Flores. When I discover I've been misled, I correct the record. Publicly. You can't. Ashley started. I can. And I will. Patricia's smile was pleasant, but her eyes were steel. Unless, of course, there's an explanation I'm missing. Something that would make sense of why a family foundation that doesn't exist is credited with donations that actually came from a grandmother you've publicly dismissed as uninvolved. The ballroom had gone very quiet. I could feel dozens of eyes on the Henderson table, witnessing the careful unraveling of their carefully constructed image. That's when Caroline saw me. You. The word came out like a hiss. You did this. I stepped forward, finally visible. Actually, I didn't. I don't know who sent those documents to Patricia, but I can confirm their accuracy. This is harassment. We'll sue. For what? Telling the truth. I kept my voice calm, steady. Everything in those documents is factual. The bank records are real. The emails are real. The foundation doesn't exist. And you know it. Derek had gone gray. Ashley looked like she might vomit. Cody was already pulling out his phone, probably to call his lawyer. But Caroline was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen from her before. Fear. We should discuss this privately, she said, her voice barely controlled. I think we've had enough private discussions. Every time we've talked privately, you found new ways to threaten me, manipulate me, or undermine my relationship with my grandchildren. I raised my voice slightly, ensuring the nearby tables could hear. Perhaps it's time for some transparency. Margaret, don't. Derek started. Your mother called me, these people, I said, looking at Derek but speaking to the room. She said immigrants like me always fade away, that we know our place, that we're too desperate for acceptance to ever fight back. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. She told people I have dementia, a complete fabrication designed to explain why I've been cut off from my grandchildren. Ashley told my grandchildren that I was born less than them, that my family was low class, that my culture and background made me unsuitable for polite company. This is lies, Caroline hissed. All lies. Is it? I pulled out my phone. Because I have emails where you and Ashley discuss these exact sentiments. Would you like me to read them aloud? Immigrants are so desperate for acceptance, they'll pay anything to feel included. Your words, Caroline, in your own handwriting. The ballroom had gone completely silent. I gave this family over $228,000 over 5 years. I paid for their house, their cars, their children's education. I gave until I had almost nothing left, and in return, I was mocked behind my back, excluded from family gatherings, and eventually erased from my grandchildren's lives. I looked around the room at the shocked faces, the expensive gowns, the glittering jewelry. You all know the Hendersons as philanthropists, pillars of the community, generous donors to worthy causes. What you don't know is that their generosity came from my bank account. Every dollar they donated to Eastside Prep, Every charity contribution, they claimed, was funded by money they took from me while calling me the old cow in private. Ashley stood up abruptly. "This is insane. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Then explain the bank records," Patricia Morrison interjected. "Explain why donations your family claimed came from a foundation actually originated from Margaret Flores's personal checking account. Explain why that foundation doesn't appear in any IRS database." Ashley's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. I turned to face her directly. "You taught my grandchildren to be ashamed of me. You told them I was less because of my background, my culture, my family. You tried to erase me from their lives because I was inconvenient, because my presence reminded everyone that your success wasn't really yours. That's not. I have your text messages, Ashley." The cow just sent another $5,000 for Oliver's speech therapy. I spent it on the new patio furniture. Your words. Your documentation. You kept receipts of your own fraud because you were so proud of getting away with it. The color drained completely from Ashley's face. "I didn't come here tonight to destroy your reputation," I said, addressing the room now. "I came because I was invited." Caroline said she wanted to talk, to extend an olive branch. I'm sure she planned to use this event to further isolate me, to paint me as the crazy grandmother who makes scenes at charity galas. I looked at Caroline. "But I'm not crazy. I'm not demented. I'm not less than anyone in this room. I'm a woman who was exploited by people she loved, who finally found the courage to fight back. And I am done being silent." I set down my champagne glass on the nearest table. The documents Patricia Morrison received contain everything. The financial fraud, the fake foundation, the hidden LLC with over $400,000 in assets. Every email, every text message, every piece of evidence that shows exactly who the Henderson and Flores families really are. I looked at Derek one final time. "I gave you everything I had, son. My money, my time, my love. And you threw it away for a woman who taught you to see your own mother as a resource to be exploited. I hope it was worth it." I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the ballroom erupted. The aftermath was chaos. I made it to my car before the tears came. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of grief for the family I'd finally, irrevocably lost. I sat in the parking lot of the Bellevue Club and sobbed until I had nothing left. Then I drove home. My phone began buzzing before I reached the highway. Derek's number, Ashley's number, unknown numbers that might have been the Hendersons or their lawyers or journalists following up on the story. I ignored all of them. At home, I poured myself a glass of wine, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat in my living room in the dark. I'd done it. I'd told the truth in front of everyone who mattered to the Hendersons. I'd ensured that Patricia Morrison had what she needed to write her correction. I'd stripped away the careful facade of success and generosity and revealed the rot beneath. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow, because Derek was still my son. And somewhere in that ballroom, he'd watched his mother destroy his carefully constructed life. Some part of me, the mother part, the part that remembered dandelions and bicycle lessons and bedtime stories, still loved him, still wished things could have been different. But they couldn't. He'd made his choices. Year after year, lie after lie. He'd chosen Ashley over honesty, the Hendersons over his own mother, money over integrity. Tonight, those choices had consequences. The call came at 2:17 a.m. I was still awake, unable to sleep, still wrapped in my blanket on the couch, Derek's name on the screen. This time, I answered. "Mom." His voice was raw, broken. "What did you do?" I told the truth. "You destroyed us. Ashley's brand is finished. Her partnerships are pulling out. The school called. They're opening an investigation into the foundation donations. Cody's lawyer says we might be facing criminal charges. You destroyed yourselves, Derek. I just made sure other people could see it. The kids." His voice cracked. "The kids don't understand what's happening." Oliver asked me why everyone at the party was yelling at Mommy. Emma saw something on Ashley's phone, a comment calling us frauds. She asked if we're bad people. My heart clenched. I never wanted the children to be hurt. Then why did you do this? At a public event, in front of everyone. You could have just let it go, taken your visitation, and been happy with that. Could I? When Ashley was already planning to take that away, when she was manufacturing behavioral issues to justify cutting my access,
when you warned me yourself that the Hendersons were planning something. Silence. I didn't have a choice, Derek.
You and Ashley made sure of that. You pushed until I had nothing left to lose, and then you were surprised when I pushed back. What happens now? I don't know. Patricia Morrison will publish her correction. The IRS will probably investigate. Your in-laws will try to salvage what they can of their reputation. I paused. And you'll have to decide who you want to be. What does that mean? It means you've spent years being Ashley's accomplice, her supporter, her excuse for why you couldn't stand up to your own mother. Now the whole world knows what you did. The question is, are you going to keep being that person? Or are you going to finally take responsibility for your choices? Another long silence. I don't know if Ashley and I are going to survive this. That's between you and her. She's already talking about divorce lawyers. Her parents are furious. They're blaming her for exposing the family to all of this.
And he took a shaky breath. I don't know who I am without her telling me what to think. For a moment, just a moment, I felt something like hope. Maybe this was the crisis Derek needed to finally wake up, finally see what he'd become.
You're my son, I said quietly. Under all of it, the lies, the manipulation, the cruelty, you're still the boy who brought me dandelions. I don't know if that boy still exists, but if he does, if he wants to find his way back,
I'll be here. Even after everything? Even after everything.
But Derek, I won't accept apologies without change. I won't tolerate lies or manipulation or excuses. If you want a relationship with me, you'll have to earn it. From scratch. With honesty and accountability and consistent behavior over time. And the kids. I want to see them. More than anything. But not if it means watching them be taught to hate me. Not if it means being part of a toxic environment that damages them. I chose my next words carefully. If you and Ashley separate, if there's a custody arrangement, I want to be part of their lives. A real part, not a visitor to be tolerated. I don't know what's going to happen. Neither do I. But whatever happens, Derek, remember that you have choices. You've always had choices. Starting making better ones. I hung up before he could respond. Outside my window, the first gray light of dawn was creeping over the mountains. A new day, a new chapter. Whatever came next, I'd face it the same way I'd face tonight, with the truth, and without apology. 6 months later, the cherry blossoms were blooming in my backyard. I sat on my new patio, the one I'd finally been able to afford after I stopped funding other people's dreams, watching the pink petals drift down like confetti. Richard had planted that tree our first spring in the house, back when Derek was still in diapers, and the future stretched ahead of us like an endless road. So much had changed since then. So much had changed since December. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Grandma, Oliver wants to make cookies again. The lion ones. I smiled and typed back. I'll have everything ready. Love you both. Tomorrow was Saturday. My weekend with the grandchildren. Not a reluctant concession extracted through legal threats, but a genuine, stable part of our family routine. Every other weekend, plus Wednesday dinners, plus holidays on a rotating schedule.
It had taken time to get here. And pain. And consequences none of us had fully anticipated. But we'd arrived. The aftermath of the Henderson Gala had unfolded exactly as Victoria Harrington predicted.
Patricia Morrison's correction ran 3 days after Christmas, a devastating piece that systematically dismantled Ashley's self-made success narrative.
She'd interviewed me extensively, verified every document, and written with the cold precision of a journalist who'd been professionally embarrassed and was determined to set the record straight.
Lifestyle influencer built brand on hidden family money and fabricated foundation. The headline had trended locally for 2 days. Ashley's Instagram followers dropped from 47,000 to 12,000 in the first week.
Her brand partnerships evaporated overnight. The candles and throw blankets sat unsold in a warehouse somewhere, monuments to a reputation that no longer existed. The IRS investigation was quieter, but more devastating. Forensic accountants descended on Derek and Ashley's finances in January, armed with the evidence I'd compiled, and the additional documents that had mysteriously appeared in Patricia Morrison's inbox. By March, they were facing penalties exceeding $180,000 for fraudulent charitable deductions and unreported income. Pacific Horizon Holdings was dissolved. The assets, including the vintage Corvette Derek had purchased while claiming poverty,
were liquidated to cover the penalties. The house in Kirkland went on the market in February. They couldn't afford the mortgage without the hidden funds or my support. The Hendersons fared little better. Cody's position on the Police Benevolent Association board became untenable after the gala. Caroline's charity luncheon invitations dried up. The Medina social circle that had once revolved around them quietly, politely, firmly closed its doors. Last I heard, they were wintering in Arizona. Society code for hiding until the scandal faded. But scandals like this didn't fade. Not completely. Not in a community as small and interconnected as the East Side elite. Derek and Ashley filed for divorce in February. The announcement didn't surprise me. What surprised me was the phone call that followed. Not from Derek, but from Ashley herself. Margaret. Her voice was flat, exhausted, stripped of its usual polish. "I need to talk to you. I'm listening. I know you hate me. You have every reason to. But I'm calling about the children." My hand tightened on the phone. "What about them?" "Derek and I are working out custody arrangements. He wants 50-50. She paused. "I'm not going to fight him on it. And I'm not going to fight you on visitation anymore." Why the change of heart? A long silence. When Ashley spoke again, her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Because I've spent the last 2 months watching everything I built fall apart. My business, my marriage, my reputation. And the only thing I have left is Emma and Oliver. And they," another pause, "they love you, Margaret. They've been happier since you came back into their lives. Even I can see that. Ashley, I'm not apologizing. I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm telling you that I'm not going to stand in the way of your relationship with them anymore. They need stability right now. They need people who love them. And whatever else I think of you, I know you love them." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. But it was something, a crack in the armor, a grudging acknowledgement that her war against me had cost more than she'd gained. "Thank you," I said finally. "For the children's sake." "For the children's sake," she repeated, and hung up. Derek came to see me in April. He arrived on a Sunday afternoon, unannounced, driving a Honda Civic that was a far cry from the Tesla he'd once flaunted. He looked different, thinner, older, the arrogance stripped away by 6 months of consequences. I let him in without a word. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd once pored over evidence of his betrayal, and looked at each other across the distance of everything that had happened. "I'm selling the house," he said finally. "What's left after the IRS is done won't cover much. I'm going to rent an apartment in Bellevue, something small, near the kids' new school." New school? East Side Prep asked us not to re-enroll. After the foundation scandal. He laughed bitterly. "Emma's actually happier at the public school. Says the kids are more real. Oliver's adjusting. And you? How are you adjusting?" Derek looked at his hands. The wedding ring was gone, I noticed. Just a pale band of skin where it used to be. "I've been seeing a therapist. Ashley's idea, actually. Part of the divorce mediation. She said I needed to work on my issues before I could be a good co-parent." He shook his head. "Ironic, right? The woman who taught me to manipulate, telling me I need therapy. What does your therapist say? That I spent most of my adult life letting other people define me. First you and Dad, then Ashley, then the Hendersons." He met my eyes. "She says I never learned to think for myself, to make my own moral choices. I just adopted whatever values the people around me had. And when those people had bad values, you adopted those too." "Yeah." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I know words don't mean anything after what I did. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I became. And I hate it." I looked at my son, this broken man who had once been my everything, who had betrayed me so completely, and was now sitting in my living room trying to find his way back. "What do you want from me, Derek?" "I don't know. Forgiveness feels like too much to ask. But maybe a chance to prove I can be different. To show you that the boy who brought you dandelions is still in here somewhere. The boy who brought me dandelions." I'd used those same words with him on the phone, months ago, not knowing if they were true. "I can't go back to the way things were," I said carefully. "I can't pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. The lies, the manipulation, the contempt you showed for me and my sacrifices, that's part of our history now. It always will be. I know. But I can move forward. if you're willing to do the work. I leaned forward. That means honesty, Derek. Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. It means respecting my boundaries. It means showing up consistently, not just when you need something. It means letting me have a real relationship with Emma and Oliver, not supervised visits or conditional access, but genuine involvement in their lives. I want that too. And it means therapy. Real therapy. Not just sessions to satisfy a divorce mediator. You need to understand why you made the choices you made, so you don't make them again. Derek nodded slowly. I can do that. I want to do that. Then, we start over. Not from where we were, that's gone. But from here. Two adults who share a history and are choosing to build something new. He stood up, and for a moment I thought he might try to hug me. But he seemed to sense that physical affection wasn't earned yet. Instead, he just nodded. Thank you, Mom. I won't waste this chance. See that you don't. He left, and I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking about second chances and whether people could really change. I didn't know the answer. Maybe no one did. But I knew that I'd rather try and fail than close the door completely on the possibility that my son could find his way back to being someone worth knowing. Summer arrived with a heat wave that had everyone in Bellevue complaining about the lack of air conditioning. I'd finally installed a unit in my bedroom, one of many small luxuries I'd allowed myself since reclaiming my finances. New shoes that didn't have holes. Fresh produce from the farmer's market instead of discount store cans. A subscription to the streaming service I'd canceled years ago to afford another month of mortgage assistance. Small things, but they added up to a life that felt like mine again. Emma and Oliver were with me for a week in July, their summer vacation stretching luxuriously ahead. We'd planned a trip to the San Juan Islands, my first real vacation in 5 years, paid for with money I'd actually saved instead of borrowed or sacrificed. The morning before we left, I was packing sandwiches for the ferry ride, when Oliver wandered into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. Grandma Margaret. Yes, sweetheart. Why did Mommy and Daddy get divorced? I set down the bread knife carefully. We'd been waiting for this question. The therapist said it would come eventually, when the children felt safe enough to ask. Come sit with me. He climbed onto a kitchen chair, his legs dangling above the floor. I sat across from him, choosing my words with care. Sometimes adults make mistakes, Oliver. Big mistakes that hurt people. And sometimes, even when they're sorry, the mistakes are too big to fix while staying together. Your mommy and daddy both love you very much. But they couldn't be married anymore. Was it because of the fighting? Because of you? My heart clenched. What makes you ask that? Mommy used to say you were the problem. That everything was your fault. But Emma says that's not true. She says Mommy and Daddy did bad things, and you just told people about it. Emma. My serious, observant granddaughter, who had apparently absorbed more than anyone realized. Emma's partly right, I said slowly. Your parents made some choices that weren't honest. And I did tell people about those choices. But Oliver, nothing that happened between the adults is your fault. Or Emma's fault. You're children. You're supposed to be loved and protected, not worried about grown-up problems. I know, Daddy told me that too. Oliver thought for a moment. Grandma Margaret. Yes. I'm glad you're not going away again. When Mommy said you had brain sickness and couldn't remember us, I cried a lot. But Emma said you come back. She said grandmas don't give up on their grandkids. Tears pricked my eyes. Emma was right. I will never give up on you. Either of you. No matter what. Oliver smiled, his gap-toothed, completely genuine smile that had no calculation or agenda behind it. Can we make lion pancakes tomorrow? On the ferry. I don't think they let you cook on ferries, sweetheart. But we can make them when we get to the island. Okay. He hopped off the chair and headed back to his room, the existential crisis of his parents' divorce apparently resolved by the promise of pancakes. Children were resilient. I had to believe that. Had to trust that the stability I was providing now could outweigh the chaos they'd experienced before. The ferry to the San Juan Islands left from Anacortes at 10:30 a.m. I stood on the deck with Emma and Oliver as the mainland receded behind us, watching the islands emerge from the morning mist like promises waiting to be kept. The wind whipped my hair, carrying the salt smell of the sea and the cries of gulls wheeling overhead. Grandma Margaret, Emma had appeared beside me, her hand slipping into mine. Yes, sweetheart. I'm sorry about the things Mommy said. About you being less and stuff. I know they're not true. I squeezed her hand. How do you know? Because you're the bravest person I know. You stood up to everyone, Mommy, Daddy, the Hendersons. Even when they tried to make you seem crazy. That's not something a less person would do. I looked at my granddaughter, this fierce, perceptive child who had witnessed far too much of adult conflict and emerged with her moral compass intact. Emma, I need you to understand something. What happened with your parents, the fighting, the divorce, all of it, that was about adults making adult mistakes. It doesn't change how much they love you. I know, but it does change what I think of them. She met my eyes with a maturity beyond her years. Daddy's trying to be better. I can see it. He apologizes now when he makes mistakes. He asks what I think about things. He's different. And your mother? Emma was quiet for a moment. Mommy's sad a lot. And angry. I don't think she understands why everything went wrong. She thinks it's all your fault. Or Daddy's fault. Or everyone's fault except hers. That might change with time. Maybe. Emma didn't sound convinced. But Grandma Margaret, even if Mommy never understands, I do, and I'm glad you're my grandmother. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tight against the sea wind, feeling the solid warmth of her small body against mine. I'm glad, too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. The week in the San Juans was everything I'd needed. Long walks on rocky beaches, collecting shells and watching for orca pods, evenings by the fireplace in our rented cabin, reading stories and playing board games. Mornings that started slowly, with no schedule to keep, no obligations to meet. Just a grandmother and her grandchildren, learning to be a family again. On our last night, after the kids were asleep, I walked out onto the cabin's deck and looked up at the stars. They were brilliant here, far from the city lights. Thousands of points of light scattered across the infinite darkness. Richard had loved the stars. We talked about taking this trip together, back before the diagnosis, before everything changed. He'd wanted to show me the Milky Way from a dark sky location, explain the constellations, share the wonder of the universe with the woman he loved. We never made it. Life got in the way, and then death got in the way, and here I was, alone on a deck in the San Juans, finally taking the trip he'd dreamed of, 7 years too late. I made it, Richard, I whispered to the stars. Not the way we planned, but I made it. The wind carried my words away into the darkness. I thought about everything that had happened since that first phone call from Derek, asking for help with the mortgage. 5 years of sacrifice and exploitation. The slow awakening to the truth. The battle for my grandchildren and my dignity. The victory that had cost me my relationship with my son's family, and maybe, eventually, given me something better. A real relationship, built on honesty instead of obligation, sustained by genuine love instead of financial manipulation. I was 64 years old. I had maybe 20 good years left, if I was lucky. 20 years to be present for Emma and Oliver, to watch them grow, to offer whatever wisdom I'd gathered from a lifetime of mistakes and triumphs. It wasn't what I'd planned. None of this was what I'd planned. But standing there under the stars, listening to the waves crash against the shore, I realized something I hadn't expected. I was happy. Not the desperate, grasping happiness of trying to buy love, not the fearful happiness of hoping my family would finally accept me, but a quiet, settled contentment that came from knowing exactly who I was and refusing to apologize for it. I was Margaret Chin Flores, immigrant's daughter, widow, mother of a son who had betrayed me and was slowly finding his way back. Grandmother to 2 children who loved me without conditions. I was a woman who had been used and discarded and underestimated, and who had fought back with everything she had. I was a survivor, and my story was far from over. We drove home on a Sunday, the children sleeping in the back seat, the Olympic mountains glowing pink in the sunset behind us. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Hope you had a great trip. The kids have been telling me about it all week. Orcas and tide pools, and the best pancakes ever. Thank you for giving them this. I smiled and typed back one-handed. Thank them for giving it to me. See you at 5 for pickup. I'll be there. And Mom, thank you for everything. 2 words, simple words. But from Derek, they meant more than any of the elaborate justifications he'd offered before. Maybe people really could change. Maybe second chances weren't always wasted. Maybe the boy who brought me dandelions was still in there somewhere, finding his way back through the wreckage of the man he'd become. I didn't know. I couldn't know. The future was as uncertain as it had always been. But for the first time in years, I was facing it without fear. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted?
Have you found your way back from a broken relationship?
I'd love to hear your stories. For the next story, click on the video on the left. And remember, you are never too old to demand the respect you deserve. You are never too small to stand up to people who underestimate you. And you are never, ever, less than anyone, no matter what they tell you.